like he's in charge. And I really hated the rolled-up sleeves. I wanted to reach down through the television. It really annoyed me.
You know what he's doing all day today was trying to avoid the flack that he quite rightly is receiving.
Wes Streeting in to do it.
Well, but they're all batting to protect Keir because he was the Director of Public Prosecution while the grooming gang scandal was unfolding. Listen, that sounds like
But also, I'm talking about Musk. Do we need liberating by America? That's the phone in at midnight.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we'll have Elon Musk as Prime Minister.
We'll be the 52nd
I'll have anyone as Prime Minister. Stick with Petrie. She'll take you through to 1 a.m. You've been an amazing audience. I've been brilliant. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening to you. How are you? You probably went back to work today, didn't you? Like Kevin, but probably not as tanned. I don't know. I've never seen him look more healthy. He's normally really sort of pasty-faced, Kevin. He always looks like he's had a big night the night before, which I know he hasn't. But he looks very healthy and very good, actually. So good for him for having a great holiday. Coming up on this programme... He's left the bit. Has he left now? He won't have heard that. So coming up on this programme, of course, at midnight we have the phone in, and I've been so intrigued by these comments made by Elon Musk, who has said he's called for the US to liberate the UK from its despot and controlling government. So, I mean, it's a very strange thing to do. He even put up a question that, yes, no, should America liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government? I'm not sure he's a tyrant, but I mean, he's annoying, but I'm not sure he's a tyrant, Keir Starmer. But anyway, he asked his 210 million followers, should America liberate Britain? And I suppose, I mean, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but look, we've got Trump and Musk taking over on the 20th of January. And Trump has already talked about, jokingly, about Canada becoming the 51st state. Then there's talk of them buying Greenland, because Trump said that he can't imagine America without owning Greenland. Now, none of these things are up for sale. But Professor Anthony Glees, who you'll know from this programme and other programmes, he's a very intelligent man. He was asked to put together 3 scenarios where Trump could take over Britain, right? And one of them is to buy us. I don't know who would sell it. I mean, who sells a country? I mean, who owns Britain? I never really thought about that before. So somebody owns it because it can be sold for about 15 trillion, apparently, and the American value is 124 trillion. So in substance, they could do it. But anyway, I just want to know how you feel about Musk getting this involved in British politics. Do you support what he's saying? Do we need liberating from this tyrannical government? He's also getting involved in conversations in Germany, in France, in Norway. And each of those leaders have said, look, this man has too much money and too much power, and he's starting to affect other countries' elections. And that actually is quite worrying. So I'd like to know from you, do we need liberating? Would you fancy being the 52nd state of the United States of America? I can tell you I wouldn't. And do you value somebody like Musk getting involved to this degree in British politics, in fact, in European politics? He is going to have the ear of Trump. And Trump has already said they want to seize the Panama Canal in South America. He's already said that he wants to own Greenland. He's already calls, well, Macron's just resigned, hasn't he? But he already called him the governor of Canada, as opposed to the premier of Canada. And there is some theory that Donald Trump and his MAGA crowd, when they say make America great again, they actually mean to extend America. I think this is really interesting. And although potentially unlikely, it's worth examining. So that's what I want to do with you at midnight. And just how much do you value this guy getting involved to the degree that he is? I mean, this spat. And also, the other thing I want to talk to you about at midnight is also, this doesn't bode well, does it? Because if Trump and Musk are in bed together, not literally but figuratively, and Musk hates Starmer, and Trump already disliked Starmer for allowing Labour people to go over and help Kamala Harris's election campaign. This doesn't look good for Britain. So anyway, I would love to know what you think. Do you fancy being part of America? Give me a call, 03444 991 1000. That's the number that you need at midnight. Before that, we've got Amy Fisher in the studio. She is the ex-communications director for the Tories. And she'll be really interesting to talk about how Keir Starmer gets through this spat with Musk, how everything can be sorted out. I don't know, can it? So Amy Fisher is in going through the papers. Rhea Freeman is here, PR expert and author of You've Got This, and this is a way to fast-track your wonderful new life in 25. Alex Three Lines Irons is also here. But today, and I watched this, just for you, watched it, although it annoyed me very much. The Prime Minister addressed the nation with a new plan to reform the NHS. Well, was it a plan or was it just a bunch of statements? He promised more NHS hubs, a greater use of the private sector to help reduce hospital waiting lists. And I've just seen the front page of the Eye for tomorrow, and it's 2.5 million people he's planning to push through the private system. And the cost of that will be extraordinary. reducing hospital waiting lists, more choice for patients to elect where they're treated, having treatment hubs on high streets so you can do it while you're shopping. It all sounds very bizarre. The waiting list currently stands at 7.5 million, and more than 3 million people have already waited longer than the 18-week target. Starmer said his plan would reduce that number of long waits by nearly 500,000 over the next year. Well, it's 7.5 million. I suppose you've got to start somewhere. Doctors' leaders welcome the plan, but are concerned over whether there are enough staff to achieve these goals, which there aren't, of course. And who is going to foot the bill? Well, who do you think is going to foot the bill? And this hasn't been costed yet. These extra hubs and things haven't been costed. That money's already gone to the NHS. So in a spending review later on in the year, I wonder what that'll mean for you and I as taxpayers. Well, look, the only people to talk to about this really is the Taxpayers Alliance, and Darwin Friend joins me now, Head of Research at the Taxpayers Alliance. Darwin, good evening.
Good evening, Petrie. Thanks for having me on the show.
Listen, thank you. I'm hoping you'll be able to unpick this for me, because there was a lot of, sleeve rolled up nonsense and still wearing a tie, mind you. If you're in a hospital, you don't wear a tie. The Prime Minister saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, this is it, we're on the pathway now. It's not costed.
No, exactly. And I think a lot of what he was saying actually was very positive, and I'd welcome a lot of what he said. But I think the big issue is what you've pointed out, which is that the proof will really be in the pudding, not in what he says, but in the delivery of it. And I think taxpayers and patients really do need to see this plan delivered properly and implemented as soon as possible. Because as you say, that waiting list, 7.5 million people, and everyone on that waiting list and everyone that knows someone on a waiting list is paying for that service and expect it to be delivered as good as possible, as soon as possible.
Well, let's first of all break this down. Let's start with the private sector. All right, so Keir Starmer wouldn't answer the question whether this was going to be a permanent fixture, but he did say this is how he's going to get the waiting list down. Like I said, I've just seen the eye, I don't know if you have, for tomorrow, suggesting that 2.5 million patients will be pushed through the private sector. Now, that will come at a cost. Again, not costed.
Yeah, so it's difficult to know exactly how much this is going to cost. But as you can say, I can imagine it's not going to be cheap. I think what the government needs to get the balance right in terms of clearing this waiting list, that's obviously got to be the priority. But delivering that at good value for taxpayers, it's fine using the private sector to help clear the backlog, as long as the government is negotiating prices for that, which is fair and transparent to taxpayers when they're making those decisions. I think the issue is with today's announcements, as you say, is that they haven't actually provided any costs to go with it. We know, for example, from the budget that they've put another £25 billion into the health service, and that's great for the health service, but they haven't actually said today whether that's coming from that funding or whether it's coming from separate funding that they're going to have to raise taxes or increase borrowing from at a later date. Yeah,
my understanding is that there's going to be a spending review to fund this later on in the year. So it looks like they'll have to find the money from somewhere to do this, because it's not going to be cheap. We've got the private sector. If we look at staffing levels, and I attach that to the private sector because, of course, many of the surgeons and many of those people work both for the NHS and the private sector. So you can't double those people. So I don't know how you do both with one person, how you get a surgeon who would much prefer, presumably, to do it on the private bill, if you like, because they'll get paid more for that, than to do it on the public penny, which they'll be paid less for. And that will just, for me, thinking logically, that just increases the number that will have to go private and diminishes the number that can be seen in the public sector.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think what the government actually needs to do is, alongside this, is build on what the Conservative Party said last year, I believe it was, about the long-term staffing strategy for the NHS, because it's great to say we've got these targets that we're trying to hit, which I fully welcome. They should be trying to push and deliver lower waiting lists for patients and for taxpayers. But actually, they have to be realistic about it, and they can't just promise things now and then down the line say, oh, well, we didn't have the staff numbers. That's always an issue for the NHS, and they need need to, alongside commitments to reduce waiting lists, also provide a comprehensive plan for how they're realistically going to deliver that. And part of that process has to be how they're going to have the sufficient number of nurses, doctors and surgeons in place to deliver the services that patients need.
And the diagnostics, I mean, he's saying that under this plan, 65% of patients will be treated within 18 weeks by the end of next year. So he's got 24 months, roughly, to deliver that. Based on the size of the current waiting list, that would mean a fall of about 450,000 people. It's a dent. It's a tiny dent. But he's making it sound like this is going to be resolved. Is he setting himself up to fail?
I mean, I think he's actually potentially setting himself an extremely low bar, Petrie. I mean, when we think about it, there's 3 million people on the waiting list who have already waited longer than 18 weeks. And when we look at the 18-week target, currently 59% of patients are being seen within that time period. As you just mentioned, he's aiming to get that up to 65% by March of next year. I frankly don't think that's ambitious enough for this country and for the NHS. I think we should be alongside comprehensive plans to make sure these things are actually delivered. I think we should actually be being bold and trying to get that waiting list down as soon as possible, because when you look at the polling of what the public actually think about Labour's plans, they're showing at the minute that over half the population don't think their reforms and plans are actually going to fix the issues in the NHS.
I mean, that may be because we've been promised it before and it's never been delivered. So we've got every right not to believe anything that we're told about the NHS. But look, these hubs that he's talking about, these diagnostic hubs, this was a policy started by the Tories. And he's talking about like using an old, let's say an old co-op on a high street and turning that into a diagnostic centre. Now, first of all, these places have to be accessed, then they have to be bought or rented, then they have to be fitted out, and then they have to be staffed. That doesn't happen in 2 years.
No, and I think, I mean, what I would welcome about those is that I do think there's a lot of potential in them in the long term to carry out tests and scans and actually be quite good community hubs for people to go to rather than going to their local A&E perhaps. But as you say, these things do take time. And I think the public and taxpayers would respect what the Prime Minister has announced today a lot more if he'd actually set out a realistic time frame by which these things can be done. As you mentioned, they've got to firstly buy up this property, then they've got to fit it out, then they've got to try and find the staff also to man these properties as well for patients. So I do think what needs to happen now, tomorrow at the latest really, is for the government to set out clear plans and timeframes by which they can then be held to account by taxpayers and voters as a whole.
But that's what they don't like doing, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of hyperbole, a lot of just words, really. Today's announcement was words. I didn't hear any structure or, like you said, any time frames or any, look, this is going to cost and we're going to have to come back to you again for tax. And I think that it's time now that politicians did start to be a little bit more honest and frank with us. We're not children, although they treat us like it, that actually let us be part of that discussion and decide whether we're prepared to go that far.
Well, I do agree. I think this government at the minute is a government of platitudes, to be honest. And I think what the public now need is a government that's going to deliver. And as I mentioned at the start, I think there are a lot of positives coming from what he said today in terms of investing more in AI, which in the long term can produce productivity enhancements and savings as well. I think these diagnostic community centres as well are extremely positive, as well as also saying that the NHS can't become a national money pit. I completely support all of what he's saying, but it's now time to deliver. And I think in the first 6 months of his premiership, we've heard a lot of platitudes, which on the surface sometimes sound good, but now it's about delivering. He's out of the first 6 months, out of that early part of his premiership, and taxpayers now need to start seeing results.
The other thing is, of course, when you look at the NHS and the staffing of it, we know that we highly rely on migrants coming and working in the NHS at all levels of the NHS. One of the big policies that we see people are getting really exacerbated by, the British people, is the extremely high levels of immigration into Great Britain, whether that be illegally or legally. is there really any way he can staff at this level and even deliver any of this without that level of immigration remaining incredibly high? So he might be able to promise to deliver on one thing, but he will fail on the other.
Well, I think what it really requires in this case is a two-pronged strategy. So as you say, obviously lots of people are concerned about immigration, but also we need people to help support the NHS. And so what needs to happen is we need to make sure we're bringing in the right people with the right skills that we need. So whether that be doctors, surgeons and nurses that we need in the NHS. But at the same time as that, we need to also be investing and really supporting our own talent in this country. And I think at the minute we have a cap, for example, on the number of people that can become doctors, that can do nursing courses as well. It may well be the case that the government needs to, whilst also bringing in people for the time being from other countries to support the NHS, it also means that they perhaps need to look into the education that we provide for people in our own country, so that then they can fill those positions in future.
The trouble is, though, it costs somewhere in the region of £100,000 to £200,000 to train a doctor, which is why they've capped the numbers, right? So they capped the numbers because of the cost of training a doctor. 6 years, you do all your stuff in hospital and stuff. Buying one from abroad is that much cheaper because we haven't had to pay for their training. So that's why that was first introduced. Forget all the other nonsense that we hear. It's because it is cheaper to bring in a surgeon who's been trained in a foreign country than it is to train our own. How do we stop governments from being so dependent on that cheap labour? OK, we still pay them the same when they're here, but we are saving £100,000, £200,000 on training per person.
Yeah, it is a difficult challenge to get a grip on, really. But I do think that whilst those numbers are capped, and obviously there is a large short-term cost, obviously, to training a doctor, I also think there's large amounts of money that the government wastes. And if they were to crack down on some of that, that obviously frees up money that could be then used to train doctors. And I also think it's about generally gathering the mood of what the public and what taxpayers want. What is the priority that we need right now? Is it that we want to bring in more immigrants to support the NHS and thereby, for example, cap those numbers on doctors from our own country who can be trained? Or do we want to perhaps go the other way around and invest more, but that may cost more in the short term, so that then we are less reliant then on those coming from overseas? I think it really is about the government taking a principled stand on what they want to prioritise right now. Is it bringing people from overseas, or is it investing in UK talent?
We've got about a 10-year lag, though, haven't we?
Yeah, that is the big issue. And obviously the government isn't necessarily, if it, for example, weren't to win the next election, going to see the fruits of its labours in this sense. But at the same time, that's the same for every government. They never know whether they're going to last more than the next 5 years. And frankly, that shouldn't be a reason at all to not do the right thing. Yeah.
What is it they say in the countries? It's planting a tree and not being alive to enjoy the shadows or something. I can't remember. Darwin, brilliant to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Very clear explanations there. Darwin Friend there, Head of Research at the Taxpayers Alliance. Do you believe him? I didn't believe a single word he said, but then I'm cynical, so there you go. Right, got to take a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On the app. On your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there. A very good evening to you. It's Petrie here, by the way, until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole with this one, to be honest with you. But it is really fascinating to me how Elon Musk is just interfering in all the politics across Europe and in the UK. He obviously can't bear Keir Starmer. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that feel like that, but he clearly has got a real issue, which doesn't bode well, actually, for the future, because he's going to be very, very powerful in the Trump administration by January the 20th, if they haven't fallen out by then. Both these men have very delicate egos, and it comes from having yes men and women around them their whole lives. They don't like being told no. They don't like being told they're wrong. They don't believe they are. So whenever anybody does that, of course, they then get nasty, and things are getting nasty between Keir Starmer and Elon Musk. Keir Starmer's trying to be the grown-up about it, but it's still getting a bit nasty. And now Elon Musk has suggested that the US needs to liberate Britain from our tyrannical government. So that's the thing. He actually has said that. Now, that would be unthinkable even just a couple of years ago. I mean, it really is quite unthinkable now, to be honest. He's involving himself in German politics and suggesting that the far right, the AfD, needs to come in. He's interfering with Norway. He's interfering when they're having elections, suggesting what people vote for. He has a very powerful, I was going to say voice, but he has a very powerful platform to use, doesn't he, with Twitter or X or whatever it is. So he's using it and he's interfering. You'd think he'd have more stuff to do, like design another chip to read somebody's mind or sort out his cars. I don't know, but he seems to have an awful lot of time on his hands. And he's got Donald Trump's ear. I mean, not literally in a box or anything. Well, mind you don't know, he might be digitising that as well. But he's definitely got Trump's ear. He doesn't like Keir Starmer. Trump's not that fond, right? So, and was saying at one point he was going to sue Britain over electoral interference when Labour Party members went across, do you remember, to the States to help Kamala Harris's campaign, folding envelopes and stuff. So, we already have now a fractious relationship with the United States, with Musk being there and disliking Starmer so much. It can only get worse for us, really. So I wonder, really, the question is, do we need liberating by America? Now, that's not as daft as a question as you might think it is. Apparently, Trump could offer to buy us. And I still don't understand how you can sell a country. But they already bought... Where was it they bought before? They've already bought a country back in 1867. Where was that? Yeah, Alaska. Yeah, they bought Alaska from the Russians in 1867. So it was a while ago, but still, you can buy a country. They want Greenland. Trump has said it's almost unthinkable to have an America without owning Greenland. And nobody's offered to sell Greenland, and I honestly don't know how you do that. And who gets the money? And what do you do with the money? Is it me? Do I own the UK? 15 trillion? We could share it out. I'd share it. I would. I'd share it with you. If I don't know who owns the UK. So apparently Trump could offer to buy us. There's also a potential, and this all sounds mad, right? It is a bit bonkers. But look, nothing's off the table anymore. The world is bonkers. They could take us by force, a military coup. Now, before you say, no, that could never happen. In the 1930s, America had a war plan to take Britain. Did you know that? I didn't know that. until today. In the 1930s, they had a plan to take Britain. I'm trying to remember the name of was it Red Wall or something like that? Anyway, I'll find it for later. But it really got me thinking about what's next for Britain. How do you sell Britain? Does Trump buy it? I mean, then what? We become the 52nd state because he says that Canada is going to be the 51st state. And a lot of the people inside the MAGA camp believe that making America great again isn't just about the United States of America. It's about making America bigger. So taking Canada, if you like, I don't know if they buy it or take it, I don't know. And Trump thinks that most Canadians want to be American. I think he's mistaken, but that's what he's saying. The 51st state, we'd be the 52nd state. Why not? Or Greenland would. Well, who knows what could happen next? Well, none of us know. So do you want us to be liberated by the United States? Can you ever imagine such a thing? I can't. I think it's unthinkable. But, like I said, stranger things have happened recently. I'll write a list in the break. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the network rate, by the way. And you can text, talk and your message to 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hi there, and a very good evening to you. I am quite surprised at some of the messages that are coming through. Yes is the answer. People want America, want us to be the 52nd state of America. Genuinely. Really? Okay. Look, I'm fascinated. So just, send me messages, call me. Do you want, I mean, do we need to be liberated? This is an extraordinary statement by Musk, but he's suggesting that we need liberating from our tyrannical government in the form of Keir Starmer. And apparently it's 60-40 at the moment that people think we do need to be liberated. So that's why I wanted to ask the question. It seems to be that yes, the yeses have it, rather than the noes. So give me a call. Do you want to be the 52nd, because I think Canada will be 51st, I don't know, the next state of America? Would you want to be part of the US under Donald Trump? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000 and text 87222. Put the word talk up front and that comes through to me in the studio. Now, though, it is time to turn our attention to sport. Alex Three Lines Irons joins me now, TalkSport presenter and producer. Do you fancy being American?
No, not at all in the slightest. I love going to America, but my passport says British on it, and I'd rather keep it that way, to be honest.
I don't fancy the gun lobby and all that.
I don't fancy not having universal health care or women's rights or swapping cricket for baseball, because to be fair, I don't like either, but I'd rather cricket over baseball either, anyway.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. It's interesting so far. I mean, really... I'm actually a bit dumbstruck. But anyway, look, let's turn our attention to UK sport now. There's more changes at the top league, proper top players.
Yeah, well, earlier today, TalkSport had broken that West Ham had sacked their manager Julian Lopetegui following their heavy defeat to Manchester City. They lost 4-1 on Saturday. Although that news hasn't officially broken anywhere else, West Ham haven't broken that either. They've denied that Julian Lopetegui has already been dismissed, but except the former Real Madrid and Spain coach is under huge pressure. He was on the brink of being sacked prior to last month's home game with Wolves, but they won that game, triggering a 4-game unbeaten run. That's the best that West Ham have had all season. That game also saw then Wolves manager Gary O'Neill get sacked in a game that was called El Sacico. However, since then, they've lost 5-0 at home to Liverpool, and they've also gotten beaten 4-1 to your heartthrob Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, currently making them sit 7 points above the relegation zone in 14th. So West Ham are looking at some potential candidates, including former Chelsea and Brighton boss Graham Potter. He's been linked with the Hammers job before and has been again, and he looks like he's going to be their top runner if they sack Julian Lopetegui. They have 2 games, or he has 2 games to prove himself. They play Aston Villa on Friday in the FA Cup, and then they're at home to Fulham on Tuesday the 14th. Both games I'll be attending, so it'll be interesting to see whether he will be in the dugout on Friday or the following Tuesday. It's
really, I mean, it seems to be contagious, this getting rid of managers, doesn't it? We've seen a few topple, but let's just very quickly. Man United, under their new manager, does appear to be doing a bit better.
Well, they've not been particularly great. It's their first draw it's the first time they picked up points, I think, in about a month. For Manchester United. But then again, when Ruben Amorim came in, he said that there will be times where Manchester United are going to struggle, and this is one of those times where they are struggling. They are looking, of course, to get rid of a couple of their players and really get rid of some of the deadwood that have been on the books at Manchester United for quite some time. One of those is Marcus Rashford, who has been at Manchester United under 6 managers, including Ruben Amorim. The club that are considering a loan deal for him are AC Milan over in Italy. Of course, Rashford has been out of favour under Amorim, but he's been out of favour with most of the United bosses in his time, and he has been out of the squad due to illness. He wasn't in the game against Newcastle earlier last week or against Liverpool, their 2-2 draw on Sunday. United ideally want to sell for £40 million. So if Musk wants to buy Marcus Rashford, he probably could. And that figure, plus his wages over £325,000 a week, are a major stumbling block for most sides. And he has also turned down approaches from Saudi Arabia and wants to remain in Europe to further his England career. So he's making all the right noises in regards to his England career. Of course, the World Cup is in 18 months' time, taking place in Canada and Mexico and the US, which might all be one country in about 18 months' time. You never know with what's happening over in the States at the moment.
You never know. But look, it seems like that if Rashford has been out of favour with all of the managers, or at least a few of the managers, then the problem lies with Rashford, right? Do you think he's got a bit too big for his boots, literally, whether he's not a team player? That's certainly what Amorim seems to believe, that he's not when he's benched him, the team have done better. So do you think that's what happens with these players? They get complacent and a bit cocky?
It could be an ego thing with Rashford. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. He seems to make a good impression on managers when they come in to Manchester United. He'll perform very well for a couple of games, score a handful of goals, and then go off the boil again. So I'm not entirely sure what the issue is with Rashford. Maybe it's a self-esteem issue. I honestly don't know.
Well, if everybody, wants to get rid of you or doesn't rate you, then the problem probably lies with you, not everybody.
Yeah, potentially.
Not everybody else. It's now time. The regular season's over. Now time for the NFL playoffs. So this is part of the states you do like.
Yeah. So this is not the one American sport that I enjoy, but. The NFL has had its regular season. We've got the 14 teams making up the playoffs that lead up into the Super Bowl, which will be taking place in New Orleans on the 9th of February, which is in about 3 weeks' time. In 3 weeks' time, we'll know who will be playing in that Super Bowl. They start on the 11th. With the wild card weekend, with games played on 3 straight weekends. The top seeds in each conference, which are the Kansas City Chiefs in the American Football Conference and the Detroit Lions, who beat the Minnesota Vikings to claim top spot in the NFC, the National Football Conference. They both missed this round with a bye, so they go straight through into the next round. For everybody else, the knockout football begins this weekend, and we normally see quite a few blowouts in the wildcard weekend. Teams that have sneaked in at the last possible second. We've got the likes of the Chargers playing the Texans. That's the first game on Saturday. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who just about squeaked in, they play the Baltimore Ravens, who've had a pretty good season. We also see the Denver Broncos, who got in beating the Kansas City Chiefs by 38 points to nothing. They're at home to Buffalo Bills. You also see the Green Bay Packers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Commanders taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Minnesota Vikings, who lost to Detroit Lions and could have claimed top spot on last night or this morning. They're at the Los Angeles Rams, and we'll see who out of those sides make it all the way through to the Super Bowl on the 9th of February.
And just very quickly, it's not on your list, but the transfer window is open now, right? Am I right in remembering
The transfer window is officially open. Okay. So we have seen the likes of Real Madrid going for Liverpool defender Trent Alexander-Arnold, which they have since rejected. And there's a lot of hearsay going on. Of course there is, because it's the transfer window. But nothing has been confirmed, and we probably won't see many signings up until the deadline at the beginning of February.
I thought that the rules were changing for players, because it's a bit odd that they can be bought and sold without their permission, really.
I mean, they still have to be given permission. They've still got to say that they're interested to go to a club. They've got to sign the contract for a club that wants to buy them.
But if the club you're in wants to sell you, you're already on the way out, aren't you? So what choice do you really have?
Or if a player has put in a transfer request saying that they want to leave, the club can try and fulfill that request. And if you're the likes of Marcus Rashford, maybe Manchester United probably should have tried to get rid of him a couple of years ago. But it's not one of those things where players can just say, you're gone, go away. Not in football. In American football, I think that does happen, where players will find out that they've been cut or they've been sold to another franchise when they get into the office, where that just doesn't happen over here.
I just think the idea of buying and selling people still isn't right, whatever the circumstances. Alex, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Alex, 3 Lines Irons there, TalkSport presenter and producer.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hi there, and a good evening to you. So coming up at midnight is our conversation about Musk and the UK and the US. And do you want to be part of America? I know. These are questions I never imagined that I'd ever ask in my lifetime. But Elon Musk has suggested that we need liberating from our tyrannical government. But does that mean a future where Donald Trump turns his attention to the United Kingdom as being part of the US? Who knows? So I'm asking that question. Do you think, A, we need liberating, and B, would you fancy being part of the United States of America? Because apparently you can buy and sell countries. This I did not know. But the Americans bought Alaska off Russia in 1867. They're looking, Trump says he can't imagine a US without Greenland. I don't know how much that's worth, but there you go. And is also looking at seizing the Panama Canal. And it has been suggested that Canadians want to be American. So Canada is referred to, tongue-in-cheek, as the 51st American state. And the UK would be 52, would it? Look, stranger things have happened and will happen. So I'm just asking this question because I really would love to know what you think about it. 0344 499 1000, and you can text 87222. In the meantime, today usually marks the beginning of the end for most people's New Year resolutions. This is the day that most people who started a New Year's resolution have already given up. And I love that about us as a nation. I love that. Don't ever change. Don't ever change. But if you genuinely want to make this year a success, how do you overcome the blocks that are in your way, whether it's in your friendship groups, whether it's in your personal life, or indeed in your business life? Are you now fed up with your job? You've come back to work and you've gone, oh, not this again. I can't do this again. I can't do this for another year. Because a lot of people are going back to work today. So if you're looking for a new start and you want to, maybe even in your own job, you're looking for a new start, to be treated differently, to be thought of as differently. What is getting in your way? Well, one of our regular contributors, Ria Freeman, has written a book. She's a PR expert and author of You've Got This. That is the book, How to Supercharge Your Business and Achieve Your Goals. And Ria joins us to share some of her top tips. Ria, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, listen, looking through your book, it is a lot of it is about us getting in the way of ourselves. How common is that?
Really common. I mean, I can't think of anyone that I know who's honest about the things that stop them. That really, when you boil it down, it's them getting in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a very American thing, to get out of your own way. But actually, what are the things that we do to ourselves to block us from moving on? Is it just fear?
Loads of things. So fear is a big one, whether that's fear of failure, because we don't like to think that we failed, but actually we can reframe that and think of it as learning. It's also fear of the unknown. It can be things like a lack of knowledge, a lack of time. But when we work these things through, there are usually solutions that we can bring forward if we're really determined on where we want to go, and we can start to look at different ways of achieving what we need to.
So there would be people, like I said, going back to work today, would have been their first day back after a holiday, and they're looking around the office going, I can't do this anymore. Is there a way, first of all, of succeeding in the job you're already in by changing your attitude? And if so, how? Asking for a friend.
I'm sure you're not. No. So, yes, there is. I think it's important to think about what you really love about your job, what you don't like about your job. And therefore, when you've identified what you're not so keen on, you can look at ways that can change. So is it perhaps that you're looking for promotion? You want to do something different. You want to sidestep or learn a new skill. How can you do that? What could you do? And, or even who's in that position that you can go and speak to and say, look, how did you get to do what you do? I'd love to know that. But sometimes we also need to kind of face up to the fact that maybe the environment isn't great. Maybe we are in that toxic environment and we need to get out of it, or we've outgrown the job or it just doesn't suit us anymore. And this time of year, when we've gone back after that break, can be a good time to have a really honest look at that and go, well, what else could I do? Because there are always options, regardless of, you know, how old you are, how long you've been in a job. There's always options out there.
The thing is, though, often when people are in a job, they get pigeonholed. That you are seen as being only able to do one thing, and that's the thing. And if you try to step out of that, then maybe there'll be people who are not keen on you stepping over that line or gathering enough confidence to say, look, I think I could do something different. So again, it's about that belief and confidence, and I don't know how you can manufacture that.
It is tricky. I mean, one of the things you touched on there is about what other people think of you. And I think that it's quite liberating when you sort of think, well, does it matter what people think of me?
I don't care.
I mean, I've got this thing that unless they're paying my mortgage, they don't have that much say over what I do. And particularly from a work point of view, it's up to you, isn't it? And if you think, well, actually, the people that are really your friends, they'll be backing you, they'll be behind you. So if they're not, maybe they're not who you thought they were.
That's an interesting part as well of your book. It is about sometimes we surround ourselves with that toxicity, those people who keep us where we are and we feel safer with that. But actually, they're not doing you any favours. Yeah,
and I think if we're all honest, we can probably think of those people who maybe were in our lives or have been, or maybe they still are, that really they want us to they want to always keep us small, not for any nasty reason, but because they understand who we are now, they understand what we're doing. And therefore, when we try new things, some people think, oh, hang on, they're changing. Who are these people? It might be a bit of jealousy, it might be the green-eyed monster, or just the fact that they can't relate to us when we want to go. And therefore, that's kind of putting a bit of fear into them in some way.
How do we identify them? And how do we identify that it's their fault, not our own, for accepting it in a way?
I feel like they're often kind of little red flags. So you say, I'm going to do such and such. It might be that you want to upskill and you want to learn a new thing. They say, oh, I'm thinking of, taking an online course. And they go, really? Where are you going to find the time? Oh, I don't know why you're bothering. I'm happy where I am, aren't you? Just these little negative niggles that come through when you're just having a chat about what you want to do.
That's really interesting. I've decided I want to do an online course on electrical stuff, so I can fix my own wires and stuff. Why not?
I mean, I love that. That's a really useful thing.
That's a really useful thing, yeah. So I'm thinking of doing that. Anyway, I see you said it's a really useful thing and not, oh, really? So that's good. So I know you're real. I know you're a friend.
Good.
What about imposter syndrome? Because, again, that was a part that I was interested in this book, because I'm with you, Ria. I don't know a single person a single woman that doesn't have imposter syndrome.
Yeah. I think if people are honest, again, there's been those moments where you go into somewhere and you think, oh, my God, why am I here? I shouldn't be here. And one of our reactions is to think, right, I need to just sort of shrink away, not draw attention to myself, not be found out, essentially. But I then say to myself, well, hang on, did I lie to get here? And I can hand on heart say I never have. So therefore, I can't be an imposter. And if we can then use that and go, well, actually, those kind of pangs and that feeling, could we make it into something that says that we're growing and that we're pushing our comfort zone? And, we should be there and we've got that opportunity. So let's take up that space in the best possible way and show why we should be there.
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome, of course, it also stops you from getting the pay rises that you're entitled to. It stops you getting the promotions that you're probably worthy. Because if you don't think you're good enough, then who else is going to think that?
Yeah, you need to be your own biggest cheerleader. And
that's really hard, though, isn't it? We are British.
It is. And I think particularly being British, you kind of think, oh, no, should I, shouldn't I? But then I try and now think, well, what's the worst that could happen? So if I try something a bit different or something that is not normal for me, if it goes wrong, then what's the worst that could happen? often it's a bit of a bruised ego. And to be honest, I've got 2 children. That happens on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a big risk, really. If you're kind of risking your life and your livelihood, huge risk. But for most of us, it's these little things like having that conversation with your boss and saying, you know what, I think I would really like a promotion. How do I do it? It might be uncomfortable, but think about the reward you could get if it goes well, and actually the risk if it goes wrong. You know, it's not that bad in many cases.
I suppose so, but it's very difficult for some people to. I've got a friend of mine who works in recruitment, and she said it's absolutely extraordinary. She said you've got a job that's advertised, and all these men go for it who are vastly underqualified, and they apply for this job going, no, I can do that, and they haven't got the experience, they haven't even got the right level of anything. And she said, and yet you get women who apply who go, I'm not sure that I'm right for this, and they are the ones that are. And she said this is a broad brush, but she said honestly it is mind-blowing. And she said, and a lot of these men have this confidence and this belief in themselves, and the women don't. So often they'll be the ones that even get the job that they aren't qualified for over women that are, because of that difference in attitude.
I think I've actually read about that, and it's something like if a man is, I can't remember the exact figures, but say 60 or 70% there, they'll apply. But if a woman is sort of 90% there, she won't. I may have butchered those.
Exactly. It's something like that. Yeah.
But it's
fascinating. Now, look, if you're going to make a journey, if you're going to change things, what's overwhelming is thinking about it as having arrived there, right? It's just like, oh my God, no, all these things I've got to do. So the suggestion is to break it down into little bites, little steps along the way, which makes it more manageable. Where do we start, though? Where do you start that?
Well, I have to say, I'm quite old school, like pen and paper. So a big piece of paper, pen.
I'm a list writer, yeah.
Yeah, there's something about writing on paper that I think is just so different to using an app or the computer, but whatever works for you. And just think, okay, well, I want to get to here, so I want to get that promotion. I want to start a new business. I want to do whatever. And just anything that comes into your head that you know you need to do to get there. So who could you talk to? Where could you learn more? What courses could you do? What resources do you need? How could you find the time? And just get it all on paper. It looked like a complete mess. But when you've got that, and you've asked yourself all those questions about, well, how do I do that? What do I need to do that? You've actually got the start of a plan that you can start to put into an order and just tick off bit by bit as you get closer to your goal and what you want to achieve.
I mean, but it is scary, right? I mean, changing anything is scary. It is just, how do you get over that fear, if you like, of change? It is fear of failure, I would admit that.
Yeah, I think absolutely it is fear, and we're sort of hardwired to stay in our comfort zones where we're safe and, everything feels good. But the thing is that kind of comfort zones are kind of warm and cozy, but nothing grows there. So I think it's always good just to look for little wins. So little ways you can push your comfort zone into what we call like the stretch zone, not the full-on danger zone where everything is terrifying, but just a little bit. So lots of things that you know how to do, and then just something that you don't on top of it. So maybe you're really good at a task, but if you tried it something slightly different, you're just expanding a bit. So you're kind of growing slowly and carefully. That sets a really, really firm foundation. If we're kind of thinking about it visually, then expands that comfort zone. So it doesn't feel like such a big jump, because all the time you're just getting more and more comfortable with getting closer to where you want to be.
That's very, very good advice. Maybe I will put on my art show this year. I've always been so scared of doing that, but maybe I'll do it this year. Ria, thank you very much indeed. Ria Freeman there. You've got this. How to supercharge your business and conquer your goals. Right, my goal next is to take you into the papers for tomorrow, and Amy Fisher is going to be with me to make sure that runs really smoothly.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, and it is fantastic to have your company and keeping me company, and you, for the next hour is Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. Hello.
Hello.
Now, we have to start, seeing as you're the person that would have had to have sorted all of this out, were it the Tories, under your guidance.
Yeah.
But this spat between Elon Musk and Keir Starmer is getting very schoolboy, isn't it?
Goodness me. I mean, the sort of war, there are so many baffling elements to it. I mean, firstly, what does Elon Musk think he's doing? And we're going to come onto that with what some of the papers have on their front page today. I mean, what he thinks he's doing is sort of wading into this very domestic policy issue. It's a hideous policy issue about the grooming of hundreds, if not thousands, of young, mainly white working class girls in sort of Rotherham, Oldham, that part of the world, by men of mainly Pakistani origin between 1997 and 2013. But that is it's a very domestic issue. It has, I mean, how on earth Elon Musk thinks this is within his purview, that he has anything to add to this conversation, I just don't know. Obviously has this war of words, as you say, massively just knocked anything that Keir Starmer wanted to say today about his New Year kind of reset, all his priorities for 2025. I mean, no one's really talking about that. Obviously, it's been quite heavily trailed over the weekend, but in terms of anything, so Keir was actually setting out today, it's completely lost in Starmer's response to what Elon Musk has been saying, and I think Keir Starmer was justified, extremely justified, in hitting hard back on Musk, particularly with some of the disgusting things he said about Jess Phillips. I mean, it was so beyond the pale and in many ways deeply ironic, because if there is one thing that Jess Phillips is known and respected for across the party political divide, is a very strong track record on standing up and promoting and protecting women and girls. So just, you know, the awful things he said, Elon Musk said about her being some rape apologist, rape genocide apologist. I mean, just absolutely disgusting. So, as I say, Starmer, well within his rights to just knock strongly back at that. Where I think it has gone significantly awry for him is when he sort of moved. He took it politically, and so he sort of started turning it back on the Conservatives. You know, and sort of saying, oh, they've jumped on this bandwagon. Well, I mean, sort of okay, but then he even went so far as to say, you know, on other people who are sort of talking about this and jumping on the same bandwagon, you know, they're coming from a position, you know, far-right position.
That's his answer for everything,
but this is also deeply insulting. I mean, he's essentially said, as far as I can make out, that if you're extremely worried about an historic, and by the way, I think potentially, or in fact, I know to be ongoing issue of young girls being groomed and being groomed by some sections of the community, that anyone who is worried about that is somehow from the far right. I mean, it's bonkers on every level, and it's deeply insulting, and he's being absolutely slammed on that.
But he believes that. He seems to believe that. I mean, even by his own admission, saying, you know, these girls were ignored because of where they came from. And yes, it was carried out by certain types of people, but he's afraid. It seems he's so afraid. And by the way, the mainly Pakistani people who are living in this country, they hate these groomers too.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
They're not all sex groomers. They're going, oh, just, you know, this is embarrassing for our community. But he seems hell-bent on not offending these sex offenders. But why would you choose to offend me and you rather than these paedophiles? I don't understand that.
This is what I mean. It's absolutely staggering.
Calling him far right.
And he's really run into some problems with this, not just from, well, just, you know, normal people like you and me. I'm sure many folk listening at home who are sort of astounded to be told that they're from the far right if this is an issue that they care about. But very publicly, as I say, it's not just other politicians who have gone for him. A very prominent lady in the Rotherham sex abuse grooming scandal is a lady, very impressive lady called Maggie Oliver, who was a constable who resigned from Greater Manchester Police in 2012 as a whistleblower over all of this, and she has been front and centre as a campaigner of this issue, you know, during, as I say, all of it, you know, back in the late 90s and 2000s, even now, even prior to Starmer saying this afternoon, she had been asking for a meeting, you know, to sort of say this issue hasn't gone away. She's been asking that for 3 or 4 days. Yeah. She hasn't met anybody, and now she has come out this afternoon, in the last couple of hours, and literally she's almost thrown her hands up in a combination of fury and misery that this is where the Prime Minister, with all of his legal background, seems to be coming from over this issue. I mean, it's, as I say, I can almost hear it in my own voice that I'm veering between, you know, incandescent with rage and upset to just profound disappointment and bewildered shock. That we're in this position.
But how can it be that the Prime Minister of this country is, it seems almost I mean, this was the problem with the police, right? They didn't want to upset the local authorities. They didn't want to upset a community. Yeah. But so rather than do that, they allowed, in my view, this rape and grooming of largely white middle-class girls. They weren't all white, but largely white working-class girls, to be abused by members of that community rather than upset the community. I mean, it seems to me to be so radically wrong. And the Prime Minister appears to be repeating the same mistake.
This is exactly, Maggie Oliver, the lady I was just talking about, this is exactly her point. It's a perpetuation of exactly the same kind of
if you're Asian and you're a paedophile, you're safer to do that than if you're white and a little girl. I mean, that seems to be...
But it goes straight back to, you know, the point you made a few moments ago, saying that there is a correlation here of these grooming cases, certainly historic, potential, as I still ongoing, but by saying it does seem to have been or being perpetrated by certain parts of communities is not the same as saying those communities per se, in and of themselves, as an entirety, are wrong. I mean, it just isn't. That's such a basic...
we're clever enough to figure that out.
It's such a basic point, exactly. So, you know, how, as I say, yes, the PM does not seem to be able to acknowledge that, and even is still sort of wanting it to sort of be swept, just not to be part of...
But this is a man who couldn't say what a woman is.
This is...
And some women have penises. You know, I mean, this is that man. So if we're expecting him to say anything of any value at any time about anything, then perhaps we're barking up the wrong tree.
And clarity of leadership. I mean, this man is the actual Prime Minister. Whether you voted for him or not, and I think, you know, people could probably, being a former, you know, Conservative Director of Comms, I think people can probably guess how I voted the last election, but he's still he's still the Prime Minister of millions of people who didn't vote for him, and so we still need to look to him for leadership over many incredibly serious issues, this being one of them, and it's so entirely lacking. As I say, it's baffling, upsetting, anger-making, just...
But he did the same thing, though, over the Southport riots, didn't he? Which nobody supported. I mean, even on this programme we were talking about them, we said, look, I don't like the violence, but I get why. And little bits of information now are coming out about the alleged, I have to say, perpetrator of that heinous attack. And he referred to everybody who was upset about that as being far right. And again, it's like, it's not... that is so divisive, and also I don't know how that takes us forward as a nation. If there are things we can't talk about, those are the things we need to talk about, right?
Well, quite. I mean, and in this, I'm just going to go out and say, I think Farage has played much more of a straight back than Keir Starmer. You know, Farage has had now this falling out with Elon Musk because Farage said, no, I'm not supporting Tommy Robinson. who is in prison for contempt of court and is of the far right. But sort of Farage came out and said, I'm not supporting Tommy Robinson, but we need to be able to have a debate about some things in this country. So, you know, in that sense, Farage making it very clear, no, he's not on the far right. He's not supportive of people who, you know, have criminal convictions and are currently in prison.
Tommy Robinson nearly collapsed that entire case.
In Huddersfield.
Yeah.
Yes, in 20...
And people are going, he was just speaking the truth. Listen, I know stuff as a journalist, but there is contempt of court, and the reasons are very solid.
As an ex-home officer...
Yeah,
there are things that you just cannot do. And as you say, the fact that...
these men nearly walked away scot-free because of him.
Yeah, it was a grooming... One of the many series of grooming cases, and... Again, in that case, sort of contempt of court, Tommy Robinson, in contravention of a reporting ban, exactly to your point about sometimes as a journalist, you know stuff that you cannot just talk about it publicly. He was running straight into where the defendant, you know, the guys on trial for having been accused of grooming, could have had a legitimate defence of, well, I'm not going to get a fair trial because the jury knows about all these other previous accusations and convictions. So, you know, that's my get out of jail free cause. And that was a very real thing that could have happened, which is, you know, it's just so perverse if what you care about is stopping this abuse. You know, don't jeopardise, don't nearly collapse cases where people are about to be brought to account in front of the criminal justice system. I think... and
I think that again is what Farage was saying, is that, look, Musk doesn't perhaps understand the laws here, doesn't understand the contempt of court.
I don't think Musk would care.
I don't think he would care. But this is the other point I wanted to talk to you about. He is now one of the most powerful men in the world, right? Not just because of his obscene wealth, but because of his ownership of look, I think he'll buy a television station or two in the UK as well, and in America. This man has got an appetite for that sort of power. He's now also pretty much number 2 for Trump.
Yes.
So, you know, elbowing Vance out of the way. He is too powerful.
Well, I mean, I'm really not being flippant, but can I just read you a description of the James Bond film, Tomorrow Never Dies, that 1997 classic? So in this particular Bond film, it follows Bond as he attempts to prevent Elliot Carver, a power-mad media mogul, from engineering world events to initiate World War III. So I came across that because I was scrolling through some old Bond films. I thought, goodness me, joking aside, that feels awfully familiar, that there is the world's richest man with this enormous media platform. Those two kind of things scary enough. Now we've got the sort of third, bit of the Venn diagram, added in this closeness to, Donald Trump, who is most powerful political leader in the world, and this is terribly frightening on a level that sort of, that was a multi-billion... That's a Bond. This is quite literally a Bond villain. That film was made 20 or 30 years ago, and that was the archetypal Bond villain. Now this guy actually exists in all our lives with this amount of reach and power over us.
I mean, because it's not just us, is it? Germany as well. Yep. He's interfering there. The Germans are keep your hands off our democracy. He's personally interfering with Norway and with and France. Those are the three that have come out and spoken out against him. But there are others as well. Saying that this would be unheard of. This is... Now, whether Musk is trying to get this all out before he becomes officially part of the American government, or whether we're going to see more of this when he becomes officially part of the American government, I don't know. But how can one man really be allowed this much power? Well, he's unstoppable. No one can sue him. No one can stop him. Point,
I just don't think whether he knows about the law in the UK or how politics is done in another country that he's meddling and interfering. I don't think he just doesn't care. And I think the genie is now so out of the bottle that if you are talking about real mechanisms of, is he going to somehow be able or want to start kind of self-policing himself when he becomes, a proper member of the Trump government when Trump is inaugurated? I mean, I heard somebody today, this morning, calling for the... It sort of when I say it made me giggle, it was in a sort of profoundly very uncomfortable way. It was for, the American ambassador to be called in. It was like... I mean, that's a lovely sort of. This is not the
British
1940s. Exactly, it's not the kind of 1940s where everybody could sit around and have a cup of tea and.
Now come in, chap. Sit down.
My dear chap, you understand this isn't quite cricket. I mean, it was just sort of like, well, I mean, we could go through that. The government could go through that sort of diplomatic, the usual diplomatic channels as they're, sort of internally referred at. But I mean, I don't think that makes the sort of.
But one thing is for sure is that, look, these men very famously, Trump and Musk, have very fragile egos. And Trump already is not happy with Starmer over the Labour members going over and helping stuff envelopes for...
And I think members of the cabinet have said about Trump personally previously.
Exactly. Mind you, didn't Musk call him a...
There have been words. There have been previous words of...
Yeah. But look, now, if Keir Starmer is not that popular with Trump and not that popular with Musk, who has Trump's ear, we are in a tricky situation regarding the special relationship, aren't we? I mean, how would you solve that?
I entirely agree. I mean, there was, sort of... I don't think it was ever going to come to fruition, but at some point it was... talked of that Farage, because of his relationship with Trump, could have some kind of official or unofficial.
Well, now he's fallen out with Musk.
And now he's fallen out with Musk, maybe Peter Mandelson, who is, our kind of man over there, the dark arts of Peter Mandelson, as, we also remember him. Maybe he's finding his way through those corridors of kind of influence and, somehow getting...
With his black cloak on.
That's totally how I envisage him. Maybe there are some things going on behind the scenes, because I entirely agree with you that at that kind of level of, PM... Prime Minister, President, people around the two of them mutually and respectively, it looks very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I don't see Trump or Musk being able to say, look, this is a historical special relationship, we have to set our petty differences aside and just crack on with it. I rather more see them going, yeah, and he said this, and yeah, he said that, and how can we hurt him? Right, that's how I see it. I hope I'm wrong.
The only thing that I could sort of take some comfort from is the sort of our civil service and, the American equivalent bureaucracy, they are massive juggernauts in and of themselves. And they're designed for that purpose, so that irrespective of whatever particular political change or turmoil there might be at the top, I mean, those bureaucracies are designed that sort of so things don't...
Musk's job is to get rid of them all.
Yes. So that's what I was about to come into, is that actually the American equivalent is already vastly more politicised and is probably itself about to go through more upheaval. But for whatever connections there still might be between the kind of bureaucratic, the Washington, Westminster side, I try and take some comfort from that not all channels are sort of stymied in this weird ego.
And just finally, I mean, this is the point where people who are anti-royals, this is where the royals come in.
Yes.
Actually, and are able to do that soft diplomatic power that people go, they're not worth the money. And then you see something like this and you go, actually, just send Charlie in there with Camilla, see how that goes. I'm sure that they'll be able to smooth it over. And that's where they become important. Right, we have got to take a quick break. So it's Amy Fisher and Petrie back with you in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's good to have your company. Amy Fisher is with me in the studio to go through the papers. And Amy, we're talking about Tuesday's papers now. And let's start with the Times. Right. Europe turns on Musk over attempts to sway voters. And I sort of referred to this. It's Olaf Scholz. Has Macron as well, and Olaf Scholz. They're all saying he's crossing lines all over the place that would have been unthinkable just a couple of years ago.
No, indeed.
Sort of state interference at that level.
Just completely insane. And actually, just to sort of make a link back to a point you just made in the last segment, I mean, Trump's fallen out with Starmer because of the Labour activists who went over during the US elections and, were campaigning for not Trump. Yeah. And yet, his closest advisor, Musk, it's totally OK for him to meddle in anybody's domestic affairs. I mean, it's quite literally sauce for the goose, as sauce for the... that hypocrisy point just sort of suddenly struck me. And then, on the front of Tuesday's Times, it comes exactly to that point that we were saying about how Musk has been truly vile about Jess Phillips, and not only did he just cross the line, but whether that sort of falls into some kind of incitement towards violence, as it's reported here that Devon and Cornwall police have already charged a man with malicious communications sent to Phillips earlier this month. So, she's already in a scary position. I mean, I've worked for quite a number of MPs and ministers and female ones as well, and I can tell you some of the level of abuse and vitriol they get, because I assume when it says malicious communications, I assume it's probably via social media. I can tell you, having worked for, say, Amber Rudd, some of the stuff that you get on there is truly terrifying, particularly in the realms of sort of threats of sexual violence and that kind of thing.
And Jess Phillips, let's remember, is the one that stands up every year in the House of Commons and reads out the names of the victims of domestic violence. Yeah. And I've met Jess a couple of times. She is such a really lovely, hard-working woman, like
and
you said, and across party respect,
widely admired. Particularly indeed for her work, for being a straight talker as a individual, but particularly also, as you say, for her work on domestic violence and protecting women and girls.
It's very, very strange that Musk is doing this, like you said, but and also to incite that sort of violence against her as well, saying she's a witch, she should be in prison, she's an apologist for rape. But let's have a look at the Trudeau resigning, and beware the Joker, right? Because Justin Trudeau announced his resignation. He had to go, right? It's just one of those things. He's been there for nearly 10 years. But Donald Trump, who has been openly ridiculing him and referring to him as the governor of the 51st state, he's also he's threatening to impose those tariffs. Most beautiful word in the dictionary, most beautiful word. Tariff of America's 51st state, and has claimed that Canada is dependent on the US. And last night he suggested that the two countries should merge in the wake of Trudeau's announcement. And this is just proof, right? This is my point. The question I'm asking about, do you want to become the 52nd? Don't think I'm mad or lost my marbles, because this is going to be the President of the United States on the 20th of January joking about merging into taking Canada into the US. He ain't joking.
Well, no, I mean, sort of Canadians are, sort of famously easygoing, but I should imagine that, around some of the dinner tables and in the pubs, this is actually not being met with that much humour. I mean, to the sort of wider point, it was not unexpected that Trudeau resigned. It really has been for the last few days, weeks, even months.
So his popularity has crashed to about 15%.
It started...
Pay attention, Starmer.
Yeah. Well, he started off at 2015 when he was first appointed. He was on approval ratings of 65.
Yeah, he was very high.
Can you imagine that? I mean, any politician in this country would chew your hand off for anything even close there. But now, as you say, it's down in the doldrums.
Apparently the Queen, I was reading earlier on, because he is the son of an ex president of, is it president or prime minister? Prime minister in Canada, and the Queen met him when he was a toddler, and then met him 40 years later. And she said, "Thank you for making me feel so old."
That's so lovely.
But he's been around this world. His wife, he and his wife recently separated, didn't they? But yeah, Trudeau, I think, had to go. It's one of those things where he's just been in there too long, not achieved anything, and time to go. But he was the golden boy of politics for so long.
If you remember back to 2015, if you go to those G7s, and it would be sort of Obama and David Cameron and Angela Merkel. Even Angela Merkel's gone now, but he'd be like Trudeau, and Trudeau himself, and then Obama, because Obama's like sort of just cool, and then Cameron by kind of association. They were like the three kind of
really cool young men.
Really cool young men.
And Trudeau was very handsome.
Oh, no, absolutely, extremely. And look, the passage of time, it is what it is, and nearly 10 years is an awful long time.
10 years of being at that sort of job.
Yeah,
definitely.
and I mean, look, there's some things that I think perhaps his legacy will be looked on more kindly than some of the commentary around today.
The fundamental mistake he made, I think, was when he cracked down so harshly on the truck drivers strike.
Again, the hypocrisy.
That was disgusting.
Yeah.
It really was. It was anti-Canadian. It was anti-democracy. It was anti-almost, closing people's bank accounts, arresting people for helping the truckers.
Very draconian.
It was disgusting. That was the nail in his coffin. That for me, that finished him. It's been a slow death.
And then been the kind of the sort of drumbeat of his incredibly worthy wokery, which I think just sort of started to grate a bit on everybody. But
so he's gone, and Trump's merger jibe after Trudeau resigns. Just very briefly, a picture of a woman who I just think is a goddess, Helen Mirren. Right at the top of the paper, how Helen Mirren keeps fit at 79. I suspect it isn't doing what I do, and that is sitting down a lot.
Well, she says it's down to this sort of 12-minute military base, so 12 minutes a day. She's been doing it for, 65 years, and that's how she looks so brilliant.
She is just... what I love the most about this woman, apart from her extreme talent, she's got a cracking sense of humour. And she's had no work done.
No.
And she looks incredible.
Oh, she's extremely attractive without sort of
really
being...
sexy at 79.
Without sort of being this, I think a lot of celebrities these days literally look alike.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Whether it's the makeup as well as the, but she just has a very, very attractive, very unique. And then I did give myself a bit of a treat over Christmas by getting a box set of DCI Jane Tennyson, if we remember.
Oh my gosh,
the classic. I've just sort of started out watching that sort of. Obviously, that was her absolutely iconic role, and it's held the test of time.
Yeah.
There's a few anachronisms.
Even though the filming is obviously old-fashioned,
and the clothes and things look a bit. I mean, obviously
dated,
but it's not so jarring. I greatly enjoyed that, so I recommend if somebody's looking for a bit of a comfort, sort of familiar box set for the grey January, that
is a good plan. I'm looking for something, actually. I might do that, because she's just wonderful. I think she looks better now than she did then.
I totally agree. I know. And there was also that there was a Michael Parkinson interview she gave. I think it was probably late 80s, maybe where she was just really starting to be, this household name. And she was essentially asked whether, because of her figure, i.e. her chest, was the reason why she was getting all these big roles. It's worth looking at the clip on YouTube, because the way she just bosses Parkinson at this point, and it's...
what a question to ask, is it?
I mean, you just wouldn't. I mean, even for its time, it was extraordinary, but just the way she handles it was... she was taking no prisoners. He knew it. He looked stupid, as I say, just for the kind of boss lady element of her personality just came to the fore.
She is a national treasure. We love her. Amy and I are going to take a break, but we will be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hi there, good to have your company, and with us is Amy Fisher, who is former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. We're going through Tuesday's papers. Again, The Guardian hitting on Musk and Trudeau. So I don't think we've already sort of covered that, haven't we, really? Let's not go there. The Daily Mail, however, Starmer's far-right smear on grooming gang critics. I'm glad they've picked up on this, because this was something you were saying you were angry about. And I think every single person who is against paedophiles raping little girls to be described as far right is absolutely beyond ridiculous. And if I could swear, I would, to enforce that view. But both producers like that. It's like watching little meerkats in there. Starmer's far-right smear on grooming gang critics. This is going to come back and bite him, isn't it?
Really, I mean, it really is. Not least because, again, the fact that he's, put this far-right smear, as the Mail on Tuesday is referring to it, but it's again still sort of obscuring the fundamental issue at the bottom of this, which is we know all about this hideous stuff that went on in Rotherham. We've had the report from Alexis Jay, who is the lady that Theresa May, then as PM, to set up the inquiry into historic child sexual abuse. And so we do have her report, and we've had it since October 2022, and it did contain a number of recommendations, none of which have actually been implemented yet. I suspect, unfortunately, if I'm going to be completely honest, at the very week that was coming out, as I say, in October 2022, the government was mired in the days of Liz Truss being a lettuce. So I honestly think that this report basically got lost, because, as I say, it was the week when Liz Truss was coming right to the end of her actual shelf life, to continue the awful comparison. And so there are real things in that report that could, and I would argue very much should be implemented. But we sort of seem to be stuck in this status of all these, smears and insults, and, as the Guardian said, lies, misinformation, all of that being flung around. There has been this call for probably about a week now for there to be another public inquiry. I'm slightly in the camp of entirely understand why people feel that might be a route to go down, but I would point back to the fact that
there are lots of reports. I mean, in Manchester, Burnham has done
another inquiry that would take years. Whereas we've
just
got
do it now.
We've got this actual report from Alexis Jay that has, as I say, real recommendations in it, which could be enacted relatively quickly. So I'd far rather that, sort of back to this point of leadership, sort of more leadership was being shown around there as to actually what the government is going to do. And I think, I hope we're going to see more of, Yvette Cooper once this big political top mess goes away, because she's actually very sound and, as I say, setting out an actual path of what we're going to do to protect.
And that's what they need to do,
girls and young women.
Amy, I mean, what this government is, I think, appalling at is communicating, because we're all sick and tired. Like Starmer today saying, we need to implement things. Well, do it then.
Go on then.
Stop talking about stuff. Stop turning up on our television screens, making me watch your whiny little voice, which really does annoy me, for hours on end, so I know what I'm talking about. Get on with the job. You've taken our money. You've got the position now. Now go away. Stop telling us what you're going to do, and blooming well, get on and do it. And if you want this report implemented, you're the Prime Minister now.
Don't
you're
keep going.
Opposition.
Exactly. Don't keep going. Oh well, the Conservatives had
no
2
one
years.
cares anymore.
Well, I mean, but that's fine.
We are where we are.
But yeah. Well, this is the thing that this government's whole approach over the last, or whole sort of sense of being over the last 6 months has reminded me of two absolute political truisms, which they have suddenly found out it is far more difficult to actually be in power and indeed try and do those things than it is to kind of frankly cart from the sidelines and go, boo-ha, you've got all of this wrong. As I say, they've suddenly found out governing is a bit more difficult than that. And there's also this sort of, it was the Tony Blair maxim that he said, one of the tragedies about being in government of any hue is that you have your greatest power right at the very beginning, when you're at least able, or at least least cognizant of how to exert that power. And I think we can all agree this government has had one of the worst, I mean, if not the worst, starts to their tenure. That certainly I can, recall from personal experience of the last, 20, 25 years, and certainly, sort of looking back historically. I mean, they've just absolutely wasted
They wasted
just wasted
first 6 months. And now we've got the FT talking about businesses having to close, speeding up closures because of this national insurance. Rachel Reeves has gone incredibly quiet since there's been lots of problems about it. But this is basically what the Prime Minister said. The Prime Minister triggered a furious backlash after saying Tory demands for an inquiry into the rape of thousands of white girls by gangs of predominantly Pakistani origin men were amplifying what the far right are saying. I hope he gets a lesson in history, and I hope he gets a lesson in communication.
But I mean, just purely on a sort of, well, both strategic and tactical in terms of what they're going to do, in the next kind of hours. I don't understand how he comes back from this. I mean, because there's no sort of statement or clarification that he could make that undoes. You just read out the quote there. That's not, when we were talking about this hasn't been like my interpretation or your
that's
interpretation.
Actually what he said.
It's actually what he said. We've had our respective reactions to it, but they're his words. So as I was saying,
suggestion, this is a far right issue.
Whoever is sitting in his camp this evening, I mean, I just don't understand from a communications perspective. I just don't understand where you could go with this.
But
short of apologising, short of issuing.
He's not going to.
But he's not going. But he's not going to. But that is the only thing that I could think to in any way nullify any of this.
I mean, I've asked you this before, rather unfairly, but who the hell is advising this man? I mean, his advisors today. One of the things that he did obviously is he rolled up his sleeves and he goes, "Time to roll up your sleeves." And you literally think we're idiots. By the way, like I said, somebody said, "Oh, but he's in a hospital, so you have to run." I said, "No, but you don't wear a tie if you're a doctor, because of if he's done that to be hygienic, you don't wear a tie." He's wearing his tie. He's done that because he wants us to be stupid enough to think, "Oh, look, he's got his jacket off, he's got his sleeves rolled up, he's ready to work." We're not that stupid. So somebody in communications has told him that's a good thing. The other thing is that one of the children that are clearly advising him
was the gang of boys.
The gang of boys, yeah.
That's Hugh Gray, I think.
Boys, as they're known in the house. But they're saying, he said, well, we are able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Which is, somebody in his team has gone, "Oh, do you know what, Gov? This is really cool. This is what the young people are saying now. Can you walk and chew gum at the same time? It means multitasking. Ha 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 ha. That'll make you look really cool." And I just wonder. He's going, "Oh yeah, that's brilliant."
Well, I think we've just sort of touched upon it, because as far as I understand, there is this the boys, gang of boys, and it's a group of relatively young men whose experience, both political and sort of life in general, has been with the Labour Party. Now, that just. I'm not sort of criticising any of them personally. I'm just, saying that doesn't necessarily give you the most well-rounded, outlook, or certainly the experience, the professional experience, when suddenly you are in this
and every word is being
spotlight like absolutely no other. Let alone when Starmer him just sort of goes off and delivers something like this, which whether he'd been planning to say that or not is kind of the question that I was coming around to, because part of me thinks he sort of must have been, because everything else about what he was saying in that speech was so planned, and clearly he had to address the Elon Musk issue.
He wasn't happy about that.
He was not, but yeah. So
but that's the other thing, right? If I was directing him, if I was saying, right, look, mate, Gov, this is the NHS reform. And there's this thing with Musk. Tell you what, let Wes Streeting do this one, because he's less likely to be asked about your relationship. He will still be asked, but he won't. He's just going to be able to say...
It's not personal, essentially.
It's not personal, and he can say, you'll have to ask the Prime Minister that. Perfect. He put himself in that position, which, to me, shows incredible political naivety. I mean, incredible political naivety bordering on stupidity. He had the option to have his health minister, which I personally think he should have done anyway, to deliver this information. But no, he wants all the glory. He wants to take it all. And he put himself in the line of fire with that press that was only there. They didn't give a damn about the NHS announcement. All they wanted to do was talk about Musk and Jess Phillips and all of that. Why did he do that? Why was he advised to do that?
So I think there are a number of different tactical ways he could have indeed dealt with. Was pretty much it was pretty car crash, right? It was awful. I was quite uncomfortable watching it at points. And you know, Wes Streeting is very competent. You know, Wes Streeting was out this morning doing the full morning round, and you know, he was pressed on the Musk stuff as he was going to be, but you know, he was able to do, as you said, you know, the answer question and then it's a baton, because you know, it's kind of just not for him. So you know, perhaps the health secretary should have fronted up this particular speech, and then you know, the PM could still have been in there in some fashion. He could have done, you know, one of the sort of set piece, you know, sort of fireside Downing Street pre-recorded, because they're very controllable interviews with one of the, you know, the BBC or whoever's turn it was, because these things go in rotation, and that is a way to then have
to manage
10 times more control. Of course, there'll still be, you know, a question, but you negotiate terms of those things out in advance with the broadcaster. You know, the pre-recorded, it just gives you that element of control. So he need not have been absent, is my point. But I agree, the level of risk that was so obviously inherent in the format that they then stuck with, not least because Musk started tweeting again this morning at about 8 o'clock. So it wasn't even the kind of overnight stuff that has been rumbling for a few days. Like, Musk was kind of launching fresh salvos, sort of in quite literally real time. So
it just seems to me to be, he's so politically naive or stupid or arrogant or something, but he's put himself in this position where he didn't need to be, and now look at the headlines. I mean, his team
well, I mean,
should
just
be
from
sacked.
any of these headlines, coming to them, if we were just to look at Tuesday's papers, and you were coming to it cold, you would have not a clue that the NHS was meant to have been the big announcement, the big set piece.
He's an idiot. Sorry, he's an idiot, because if only an idiot surrounds himself with idiots. Right, we've got to take a break, but Amy and Petrie will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hi there, it's good to have your company. And Anthony, Amy, is enjoying it. Says, welcome back, Petrie. Love the show and enjoy listening to you and Amy on the papers. So there you go.
Thank you, Anthony.
Amy Fisher there. Let's have a look at the Metro again. The only mention of the NHS is NHS reset overshadowed by Musk row. X Factor spat hits Starmer. PM slams lies as he rules out inquiry into child sex grooming gangs. That's the sort of countrywide review that some people want, inquiry. But again, nothing on the NHS. The Eye, which typically goes against all the papers, has mentioned the NHS. NHS will send an extra 2.5 million patients to private hospitals in urgent attempt to cut those waiting lists. The waiting lists currently are at 7.5 million.
So if you were, Starmer or his team, and
this
you
is
were...
not the message you want.
But I was about you taking the words out of my mouth. I was about to say, and you were desperately looking for some kind of coverage of your big NHS speech, and you might finally get to the Eye and see NHS, thank goodness somebody... That was not the... That would not be the headline that you were wanting to have landed as the big message coming out, as I say, of your big reset speech for 2025. So, yes, the front of Tuesdays, I will not be providing much succour to.
So, if you were a communications director at this point, you'd be going, "We missed it."
Weeping. That or slightly at the gin. One of the two, possibly both. Well, joking aside, the mood must be very grim. As I was just saying, I think there has to be some kind of immediate discussion going on of what are we going to do about this, far right smear, the apology that's never going to come. But sometimes if you're in such a pickle, you have to take drastic action. But then secondarily, with this NHS stuff,
they have missed it all.
I would be starting to rethink, well, how do we repackage this? Because actually there was an awful lot of stuff in it. People are, as we know, the NHS is one of the things people care most about. We do know it's wildly overstretched.
I mean, there's undoubtedly going to be pages on the inside, but what you want on a
but
big...
nothing's landed. Nothing's landed. And it's not even going to be... but it's not going to be the headlines broadcast-wise tomorrow, right? Because, the broadcasts have moved on. There was quite a bit of it trailed, and then, it's all completely moved on. So unless you are somebody who's going to really, who's really sits down and kind of reads the newspapers or has, the online subscription, unless you're going to go really digging for, oh gosh, what happened to the PM's big NHS thing, I haven't seen anything about it. It's gone.
It's gone. It's gone. They've missed it. The Daily Telegraph for Tuesday. This is again the headline that it does not want. Starmer calls for grooming probes are far right. So he's saying that calls for grooming probe are far right. The PM accuses Badenoch of jumping on the bandwagon as a battle with Musk intensifies, like they wouldn't have done as well had it been the other way around. But this is the headline that is going to haunt him. That if we don't appreciate or approve of people raping little girls, then we're far right. We're far right. And that, I mean, maybe he'll double down on it. That wouldn't surprise me.
But well, he's either got to double down, or as far as I say, he's got to apologise. Like, because it's not. He can't just. There's no kind of muddling. I didn't mean that. And this issue is not going to go away. This is not kind of one hit. Horror story of, well, today's headlines, tomorrow's fish paper wrapping. This is not neither the issue in and of itself, nor what he said about it with reference to bandwagons and being on the far right. As you say, if you care about, people raping little girls, it's not. There's not going to be kind of put your head, events dear boy, trog on, we'll get through it. This is not that.
But I was watching independently with my producer. She was at her home, I was at mine, and we were messaging each other. And I was going, he doesn't do well under this sort of questioning. And she was going, oh my God, I know. And then that's what happened, is he came out with this stupid far-right comment, which is pretty much the only thing that's landed properly, and has made several of the front pages about, you know, the reference to people.
But he's also literally called, like, you know, Jess Phillips, who's front and centre in all of these issues. He's literally called, you know, his own minister.
Is he calling her far-right because she cares?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, God. This is another line here. Smokers and the obese to be sent to the back of the NHS queue. I don't believe that. I think that's nonsense. I can't read the piece because it's so smudged, but I suspect that is some...
I don't understand how they police it particularly.
No, and also, if you're unwell, you're unwell. So you're having a heart attack. Sorry, you're obese. We're not going to help you. Or what? You know, I mean...
Well, exactly, like you're having a heart attack, you smell a bit of smoke. I mean, it's just, I don't know how it works in practicality.
I think it's nonsense. Trains cancelled after unions drivers refused to walk on snow. Now, that I do believe. Yeah. So that is the Daily Telegraph, but that headline, Starmer is not going to be happy with. Oh, and here's another one. Daily Express. Fury as PM smears concerned politicians for jumping on the far-right bandwagon. Starmer out of touch on rape gang scandal. Sir Keir Starmer was last night slammed for being out of touch with the public after smearing politicians demanding a national inquiry into rape gangs. Literally saying jumping on the bandwagon of the far-right. So, I mean, that's, again, he's not going to be very happy with that, so that's expressed. And what does the Mirror say? The Mirror's usually quite kind, isn't it? Let's have a look. Say the Mirror. No.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Mirror, I would have expected them just to put on the NHS stuff because they're very much in love with Labour, but no. It says Starmer blasts Musk, outrage at billionaires' grooming gang smears, and PM warns far-right lies, putting people in danger. It's not going to.
It's pretty thin gruel in terms of comfort for Starmer, even from the Mirror, indeed.
Even from the Mirror, which is extraordinary to me. I would have thought they would have been a bit kinder. The Sun goes a completely different direction. Strictly Shirley stalked for 6 years. A man has been charged with stalking Strictly Come Dancing judge Shirley Ballas for more than 6 years.
This I do find quite a strange editorial decision.
I do too.
Because it's so far from... I mean, I know but it's so far from...
Yeah.
Really from everything.
Yeah.
And also... Well, I saw that when... and just kind of was slightly sort of...
My theory is that the Sun... that there's a bit of left-leaning in the Sun, and that if there's nothing good to say about Keir Starmer, they say nothing at all. That's my theory. But I don't know. I mean, it's just what I've noticed. It's what I've noticed over the last sort of few months, that if you can't say anything nice about Starmer,
don't say anything at all.
Change your front page to be whatever you want. The Daily Star. Let's go with this. I'm very disappointed. Sorry, Star. I'm disappointed in you. Normally, there's some great bit of Pritt stick use and cutting out of images, but no.
Sometimes an alien or two, or that
an
kind
alien,
of...
yeah.
Yes.
Keir Starmer in a rowing... But no, that was Rishi Sunak in a rowing boat, wasn't it? Keir Starmer in a helicopter? No, the other way around. Anyway, this says 23 lucky boozers holed up in Britain's highest pub for 3 nights. So you want some ice with that. Almost 24 drinkers have been snowed in at Britain's highest pub in North Yorkshire for 3 nights. The Lucky Gits.
I think this looks quite cosy and would be quite fun for about the first half an hour.
Yes.
And then you'd probably want to sort of commit murder for everybody running. But what is really nice about this is I'd read somewhere else. I think there's an Aussie chap staying here. So not staying is stuck there, and I think that snowman in the pitch there is the one built by him, because he'd never seen snow before.
Aww.
So there's an Australian chap not only snowed in but has built his first snowman.
A very, very nice, jolly, fat
technically
snowman.
quite correct snowman with the carrot and the coal.
The carrot. Yeah, absolutely, he's done well. So that's that. Yeah, like you said, no clean underpants for 3 nights as well. That's where my mind goes.
You'd start to
showers and underpants.
Sense of humour would start to slightly wane.
Yeah, definitely, especially with everybody else. Amy Fisher, thank you for that. That's absolutely brilliant. That's Tuesday's papers for you. Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. We'll see you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Now, coming up, we are going to be addressing what happens with the United Kingdom going forward, because Elon Musk, that man who is now very close to Donald Trump for now, who knows how long that'll last, has suggested that we need liberating, or asked the question, should we be liberated from our tyrannical government? And apparently it was 60-40 in favour of that. I've seen this in my texts and phone calls now. Some of you actually do agree we need liberating. But the question goes further than that. Do you want us to become part of the US? I know it seems like a really weird question. I'll explain more as we go through. But get ready to give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Give me a call.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good morning to you. Yep, it's morning already, and it's already Tuesday, the 7th of January. Right, this may seem like a really odd question, but I'm going to ask it, and I'll tell you why I'm asking it. It's not, I mean, I've just gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this one, to be perfectly honest, but it's about the Musk spat with Starmer, right? And he tweeted, or X'd, can't say, it sounds wrong, a question saying, America should liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government, yes or no? So he thinks that we need to be, either it's tongue-in-cheek or he meant it. He doesn't like this government. He supports Tommy Robinson as a freedom fighter, a master of free speech. What he doesn't quite understand is that because of what he did, some child rapist nearly got off because he was in contempt of court for what he did. And if I had done the same thing, let me promise you this right now, if I had done what Tommy Robinson tried to do, I would have been jailed as well. And I'd have probably got longer because I'm a journalist and therefore probably should know better. Contempt of court is real. And it's something that we have to deal with all the time. Once a case goes live, we don't talk about it. We certainly don't suggest that the people in the dock are guilty or innocent, because that interferes with due process. That interferes with the jury, right? It gives them... it's just wrong. It's just completely wrong to do. And that's why he was jailed. Whether you like him or not, you have to have support for that, because it was the wrong thing to do. And had he got away with it, then the men who were on trial at the time would have had the perfect excuse to collapse the case and walk away. So that is why this very serious line was crossed, and why he was treated in the way that he has been, in accordance with the contempt of court laws. But that aside, Elon Musk believes that this is a tyrannical government ruling over us. And of course, we don't need liberating, because we do have elections, providing this government plays fair with elections in the future. We have elections. So that is a question just a bit of devilment. At the time of publication, the vote split 60-40 in favour of liberation. That was after 15 hours and 1 million votes. I don't know where we are right now. But what on earth would this zany and bizarre idea actually look like in practice? So that's why I'm asking these questions. And it comes after Trump's team have already floated buying Greenland and making Canada the 51st state and seizing control of the Panama Canal. So these have already been, these are already things that have been suggested, okay, by the MAGA crowd. And some of them are saying, look, making America great again isn't just about the states of America in that lump. It is about making America great again. So in other words, taking over Canada, perhaps, buying Greenland. It's not unusual, apparently, to buy a country. I didn't even know you could buy countries. I didn't. But in the 1800s or 1900s, America bought Alaska off the Russians. And Trump has already said, I don't see America without Greenland. So we need Greenland. So we buy that. So Professor Anthony Glees, who I've interviewed many times over the years, brilliant guy, brilliant, a politics and security expert from the University of Buckingham, told The Sun that Musk's approach is madhouse politics, but he warned Britain that should dismiss Musk at our own peril. So all these questions about, you know, joking, ha ha ha, should we liberate Britain? There are 3 ways in which liberation of Britain, according to this professor, could happen. And that's where I'm coming from on this. I've already had a message here that says, here we go, I want to read this. I feel you're being deliberately misleading. This statement was Britain needs liberating. He didn't say Britain needs occupying by the United States, or we need to become the 51st state. Did France become part of the UK or USA when we liberated them from the Nazis? And in answer to the question, do I think we need liberating from Starmer's tyrannical government? I think the answer to that must be yes, because I can't see the rest of that tweet, that message. But I'm asking this question because it's interesting, right? It's just interesting. And he's saying, don't dismiss Musk at your peril. There are 3 ways. The political pressure fomenting a kind of revolution, trying to buy the country, and a nearly totally unthinkable of military intervention. Now, before you go, that would never happen. Never happen. Well, in the 1930s, America did have a plot to take over Britain by military means. It was called the Plan Red, I think it was called. Let me just double check that. War Plan Red. how we will overthrow the British Empire. So all of this sounds completely mad, said the professor, and yet we're dealing with a new president who's full of the strangest, weirdest ideas about all sorts of things, and whispering it in his ear is Elon Musk. So I'm asking you, do you think that it would be possible to be part of America? Right, we were part of the EU. I mean, we weren't sold or invaded, but, you know, we were. The professor said, I think there are 3 ways this could become real. The first is that Trump offers to buy the United Kingdom. Honestly, never heard anything like it. And if you look at the sums, it's not totally out of kilter, he says. The UK is worth about 15 trillion, and America's net worth is around about 124 trillion. So in theory, America is rich enough to buy us. He says, I know that sounds completely ridiculous, but in a sense, it's feasible due to his past. The US famously purchased Alaska from Russia back in 1867 for the modern equivalent of $130 million. Not very much, is it? Trump has already made countless promises to his people in the world over what he plans to do as leader of the free world. So, I don't know how you buy I don't know who you buy a country from. Who owns Britain? I don't know. I don't know how you buy a country. But Trump is keen on Canada and Greenland, apparently, and the Panama Canal. So would you want to be part of the United States of America? I suppose. That is a question. I mean, is it possible? Who knows? But it's certainly not impossible, which is what I think makes this interesting. So give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate. And you can text as well the word talk and your message to 87222. Now, if you know how you buy a country or who you buy it from, can you give me a call? Because I don't know where I'd start. Obviously, I want to buy somewhere. And I've got a spare 15 trillion. And I don't know. I mean, how do you buy a country? And who owns it? I mean, who do you call? You know, if you want to buy a house, you put a note through the door, don't you, and go, hi, I don't know if you're thinking of selling soon, but I'd like to buy it. But I don't know how you do that with a country. 0344 499 1000. Now, let's go to Bex, who's in Essex. Hello, Bex.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Good morning to you. I'm good, thank you. What do you think of this absolutely bonkers idea?
I'm for the bonkers idea. I would happily be a part of America. I would happily live in America more than living here. I've always been, proud to be British. I've always loved this country. Right up until, to be honest, I say right up until Keir Starmer, but let's be honest, the Tories ruined this country alongside of what's even going on now. It's to me, I don't see them as any two different political groups. They're one of the same in my eyes.
I tend to agree with you on that, yeah.
Yeah, this country has just become a mishmash of everything but nothing all at the same time. There's no direction, there's no values, there's no culture, there's nothing that makes this the UK, Britain, nothing. Like, what are we? We're just a mishmash of everything else. And
it does feel like that. It does feel we've lost our identity a bit, doesn't it? Our direction as a country.
Yeah.
But what about America? Would you prefer?
I like the fact, because I since obviously I don't feel proud to be British anymore. I've actually been looking into wanting to emigrate because I just can't stand it anymore here. And America is on number one on my list purely down to the fact that they still hold their values in their country. They have flags outside their houses because they're proud to be American. And I love to see that. And there should be no shame in that, but it feels like in this country you are shamed if you put a flag outside your house or if you're proud to be British.
Yeah, you're immediately far right, aren't you? I mean, apparently, if you care about,
I would feel,
you know, if you care about little girls being raped, then you're also far right, apparently, according to our Prime Minister. But what about the things about America that aren't so great? What, you know, if they took us over, the gun laws, for example. Do you want British people to be able to have guns?
It's a difficult one because I would say I'm 50-50 on that one. 50% yes, because we have no way to defend ourselves as women in this country, with the fact that how many women don't feel safe at going out and walking down the street or going out at night. We can't even have pepper spray, not even that. How do we defend ourselves? We have no way of that, and I don't like that. But the other side of it is guns in the hands of the wrong people, and they will always get into the hands of wrong people. You have them school shootings and all of that kind of thing that goes on in America, which is obviously really not good. What I think I don't like about America is the fact that their food, what's in their food, the ingredients in their food. Is
I agree. I mean, it's just awful.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's so bad. I mean, I've been watching recently. I've got sucked into. I deleted TikTok and I've got sucked back into it again by a friend of mine. But there's this there's this woman who takes the mick out of American food. What they cook, it's just horrific to me. They're not even real ingredients. Like these square blocks of bendy cheese and things like that.
Yeah.
But on the whole,
someone had I saw some guy. He had there was like squirty cream, and it was cheese in the squirty cream can. It was disgusting. The stuff they have is insane. But as a whole, I think any country in this world should have their values, their traditions that should be perfectly fine to have. You shouldn't be able to go into a country and eradicate the culture and the traditions that they have, or be shamed into having them. And that's exactly where this country comes. And I feel like in America, that's the difference, and that's what I like about America. They still have their free speech.
I get that, and I also I like the way Americans will call themselves Irish American or Scottish American, or they always attach American to it, so that there is that pride of being there. And I accept that there are things that they do right and things that we don't. But it was Trevor Phillips, I think, who once said, "Look, we can be multi-faith, but multiculturalism doesn't work. We need to be one culture and multi-faith."
No, and I think that.
But you see, I agree with that.
The problem is with this country is. See, that's the thing. This country could work as a multicultural country. Is the way that the government react with the situations, like, for example, favouritism, certain religions, certain groups of people, letting certain people sort of not investigating, like this inquiry into the grooming gangs and all that kind of situation. And
because of cultural sensitivities.
Like, you're creating division just by...
I agree. And this is something I think that will come back.
Right. They actually create the problem themselves.
I agree. I totally agree. And it's always the case that those things that you're not allowed to talk about become the biggest problems in this country. And if we're not allowed to accept that overwhelmingly the grooming gangs were from Pakistani origins, that does not mean we're not stupid enough to think that all Pakistanis are, depraved sexual predators. We know that this is a problem, though, in that community. And we should be allowed to say that without being called far right. And because we're not able to say that, it drives people more to the right. Simple. It's not difficult to work it out.
That's the thing. It's like it's not difficult, but Keir Starmer seems to find that incredibly uncomfortable. I just feel like Keir Starmer is just purchased.
I think he's a coward.
Like he's just got his nose in the trough. He's been purchased. He's got his... and he's not fit for this country. So, to be honest, at this rate, I would rather see Donald Duck purchase the UK than have Keir Starmer as our Prime Minister, because I dread to think what this country will be like at the end of his term.
Well, I think we know from having
bankrupt as well, no doubt.
Yeah, having seen it before. But yeah, no, listen, I get you. I understand that, and I do understand that's why a lot of people are so angry with what's going on at the moment. But I mean, I just think he's a political coward. This is a man who couldn't tell you what a woman is. You know, he's too scared of tiny minorities. He's terrified of them for some reason. He's not brave enough. He hasn't got the cojones, you know, and he can't tell you what a woman is. So how's he going to talk about grooming gangs? You know. He's a coward. That's what I think, anyway, in my view. Bex, you're brilliant.
Yeah, and he also says that he stands for women, but how can you stand for women when
you don't know what one is?
For women when you don't know what a woman is? How does that work?
Yeah, and also he stands for workers, but he couldn't tell us what a worker was either. So we don't stand much chance. Bex, it's wonderful to talk to you. Thank you for calling in. You take care. Happy New Year to you. Beck's there in Essex. So she says she'd rather be part of the US because at least they appear to have that semblance of community, which she thinks is sadly missing in the UK. Would you want to be the 51st or 52nd state of the United States of America? Don't knock it. It could happen. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
So, hello, it's Petrie, by the way. So, apparently, America could offer to buy us. I'm still unclear as to the rules of how you purchase a country. But it did make me think, do you remember the time when that American billionaire or millionaire, whatever, he wanted to buy Tower Bridge, and what he actually bought was London Bridge, and he didn't know until he got it out into the desert, and he thought he'd brought Tower Bridge because he said, I want to buy that London Bridge. And so they went, all right, you can have it. Somebody, I don't know who owned the bridge, but anyway, they sold him London Bridge, and he had it transported all the way to a desert somewhere and had it rebuilt. And when it was rebuilt, he was going, well, that's not the bridge I wanted. So we could do that. If Americans want to buy, they don't even know where it is. I mean, let's be honest, they don't really know where the UK is. So we should think of somewhere that we could sell them for 15 trillion, and then by the time they get it home, they'll realise that it's the wrong country. sell Iran. That would be brilliant. And we get 15 trillion for it and we'll just share it out amongst ourselves. They'll never know. They don't even know where it is. But if you wanted to buy a country, how? I don't even know how you can, but it is possible to do. They want to buy Greenland, but who from? Who owns Greenland? And who gets the money? And then what happens? I don't know. These are the questions I need answering. To be perfectly honest with you, I've got a clue. But should we be liberated by America? That's just one, that tweet that Elon put out, the liberation. This is just one of the theories of liberating Britain. One of them would be to buy it. The other would be to invade it. And the other one would be to cause a political upset and therefore sweep in and take over. So those are the three ways that have been identified of liberating, in inverted commas, Britain. Militarily, we wouldn't stand a chance. I was looking at the relative sizes, because I'm an anorak, of the American and UK army. Not a chance. We wouldn't stand a chance if America decided to invade us. And don't think that couldn't happen, because as early as the 1930s, America was looking at how it could invade, take over the whole of British Empire. So it wasn't that long ago, right? So it is possible. It's not probable. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. On a level, mind you, I've seen so much stuff going on recently in these recent years that I don't put anything as being impossible anymore. But I don't think it's impossible. But I don't think it's probable. But hey, why don't we examine it anyway? Why not? What else are you doing? Let's have a look at some of your messages. This one says, yes, let's join the US. That's what it said, honestly. If it means we could get rid of this awful government, if we carry on, there'll be nothing left of Britain. I mean, be careful what you wish for. Hi, Petrie, this is from Ernie. I'd sooner be liberated by America than Russia or China, which is the way we're heading with this far-left government. Ideally, I'd like us to be led by a firm middle-of-the-road party that only answers to the British people. Most people are centre. They really are. But they're being pushed to the right by the left saying stupid things, like saying you're far right if you care about little girls being raped. But, you know, the question should be asking is, does Musk have a point in his views? I believe he does on some points. I think the phrase about liberating is tongue-in-cheek to get under two-tier Keir's skin. Yeah, I agree. But nonetheless, it's an interesting question. So let's take a call. Let's talk to Terry now, who's in Dover, the White Cliffs of Dover. There we go. Hello, Terry.
Hello, Petrie. Yes, I live not in Dover, but about 5 miles along the coast.
How lovely.
In a seaside place called Warmer, actually. So,
oh, is it warmer?
No, it hasn't been. Not at all.
Not at the moment. No. Are you expecting snow on Wednesday and Thursday?
Possibly on Wednesday, yes. There's been no snow so far.
It's about 1 centimetre of snow, I think. It's not going to be very much. Not enough to build a snowman.
No, well, I'm too old for that anyway.
So, Terry, do we need liberating from this tyrannical government?
My jaw dropped when I heard you say that in the 30s that America were considering taking us over. I'd never heard that
I'd never known that before either. The Plan Red War, something I've
And then they came into the war and liberated us, so to speak, well, almost, then. But two topics you've got tonight, Petrie. This liberation from America, liberated by America, and also the sex abuse scandal. Can I just mention that briefly, please? Because this thing about Keir Starmer saying that you're far right, then...
Oh, that is disgraceful, right?
Care about... No, but I think what's happening here is that... OK, he's defended himself at the time when he was Director of Public Prosecutions and all that, to a certain extent. But the far right, and Tommy Robinson's been mentioned, I think they're coming at it from purely on the racist point. You know, Pakistani gangs do the grooming. That's a way for them to say, you know, we've got too many foreigners here, and all the rest of it. But the point about the full public inquiry, in my view, is there's been this J report under the Conservatives, which Labour want the recommendations to be implemented. Yes, very good. But the victims still want the full public inquiry because they want some members of the police, local authorities, social workers, those people who were negligent and didn't do what they should have done.
But they were negligent on race grounds. They did not want to upset the Pakistani community.
Exactly, yeah.
And the Pakistani community would have been upset with having rapists in it. Right? I mean, we're not saying the entire Pakistani community went, oh, yeah, that's really good work, well done.
If they're strict Muslims, yeah. If they're strict Muslims,
yeah, they would have been saying, well, this is disgusting, it's outrageous. So it isn't the Pakistani community, it's an element within it.
Yeah.
But so on race grounds, the police didn't want to upset the apple cart because they didn't want to be called racist. The social services ignored the girls because they didn't want to be called racist. Yeah. It was easier to have these working class white girls just be told they were liars than it was to deal with the racial element of this. But just because we recognise that doesn't make us far right.
No, of course not. No.
It will come back to haunt him, that will.
Yeah, I mean, an advised comment. On this point about America possibly buying Britain, I mean, it all boils down to... You know, we're individual freeholders now if we own our own property and our own land. So they would have to negotiate with everybody. But it, you know, it goes back to feudal times.
Oh, I'm putting the price up. I'm a freeholder. Right, that's it. I'm going to hold out for $1 trillion on my own, I think. I'm going to be that person, the last person on the estate that doesn't sell. Right? And I'm going to be so rich by the time that Elon Musk has had to cough up.
You've obviously been thinking about this.
Oh, it's just come to me. I'm doing it. I mean, yeah, I don't know how you even buy a country, but apparently it is possible. And we're quite cheap at 15 trillion.
Is that what it is? Yeah, of course, in medieval times, of course, the king owned the land and individuals, farmers, basically, they paid tithes and
that's right.
To the king. But then gradually, of course, freehold came in and people started owning their own land. And how would that work if the country tried to come in and buy it? So, I mean, it couldn't really work, could it? I mean,
I don't think so. But there are smarter people than me out there who say that it is possible. It has been done before.
You mentioned
Alaska.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And he wants to buy Greenland.
What? Because of the gas and oil, probably.
Probably, and also it's a great outpost to get in a war against North Korea and Russia.
Well, he's a deal maker, isn't he? I mean, basically he's a businessman, and you know, I think he's just obviously a bit narcissistic, and he loves the attention, and he loves to make deals, and that's what he's about, really. But
can you imagine? But the serious point about this, though, Terry, is what is our relationship with the US going to be, with Musk hating Starmer and Trump disliking Starmer? I mean, how are we going to have any sort of special...
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, we've got Peter Mandelson appointed now as the...
Oh, that's all right, then. The Dark Lord.
But apparently, Nigel Farage, apparently, is going to help out in that direction.
Not anymore, because he's fallen out with Musk.
Yeah, well, of course he's fallen out, yeah. But, I mean, people are saying that how long is Musk going to be in the Trump circle? But
I think they'll fall out pretty soon, actually.
Yeah, that's what people are saying. But, I mean...
clash of egos.
I mean, the thing is, Petrie, it all boils down to trade. It's just like China, you know. We need to stay on board with China despite the human rights abuses and everything because of the trade situation. And the same with America. I mean, they're our biggest export market, aren't they, America? Especially
America is massive, yeah. But Europe is massive to America, and they're quite happy to isolate Europe. But also, China has got a real problem now with Vietnam. I was just looking into the figures today, because I'm really boring. And I was looking at the figures there, and Vietnam now is taking over in terms of production of these sort of cheap plastic manufactured goods.
Really?
So this could be, they could become a real contender for that Chinese crown. That's what they're working towards at the moment. Yeah.
Why? Excuse me. Why are all the Vietnamese, lots of Vietnamese, coming to this country?
I know. It is utterly bizarre, but the cost of living in Vietnam is very, very high, and so they need to earn a lot of money. They get very low wages, and they need to earn a lot of money to buy a house or get married and have children. And many of them are seeing Vietnamese relatives come over here and be able to do that. They're told that their wages are about £250 a month, and when they're told that you can earn, £1,500 a month here, then they make the joke. They're paying 20-30 grand.
You're really up to speed on this, aren't you?
Well, I do a lot of reading because I'm enormously dull. But anyway, that's what I was looking. So we wait and see what Vietnam does with Chinese trade. It's going to be a very interesting thing to watch. Terry, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you very much. I've got to take a quick break because I'm late.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there. It's good to have your company. Good morning. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. We've got about 20 minutes together. Let me read some of your messages that have come through on the question, do you think we need to be liberated by the US? And also, would you want to be part of the US? Would you want to be? I mean, there was always the joke, wasn't there? I sort of remember, it wasn't Reagan. Maybe it was, I can't remember which president it was. Well, we were referred to as America's poodle, weren't we? It wasn't Carter. It was the one with Monica Lewinsky. It's okay. Anyway, but no, not Bush. No, not Bush. It was the other one. Anyway, you're all screaming at me. Oh, right, OK, so it was Bush who said that. Oh, good, right, because I got the wrong president in my mind. So Bush said that to upset the UK. He said that we were America's poodle. And we were often described as the 51st state. I seem to remember that as well. Oh, the UK is nothing but the 51st state of America. You know, that's who they are because they're the poodle and they do everything that they're told, blah, blah, blah. So the question now is, because that's already been suggested, is it possible that we would, could, should become part of the United States? And the reason I'm asking that is obviously because of Elon Musk has suggested that we might need liberating from our tyrannical government, and there are three paths to liberation. There's political unrest, and then they just swoop in and take control. There's buying the country for 15 trillion, although I'm very confused about how that's possible. And then there's war. But I mean, the point has been made. Look, we liberated France, and we didn't then go, right, we own you now. But they wouldn't do it for nothing, right? So if they came over, and it was already planned in the 1930s, War Plan Red. So that was the plan. They were going to take over the British Empire. So there you go. So I was just wondering, it's just really a theoretical question. Would you want to be part of the United States? Lisa has said, could you imagine if the US took over, guns would be legal in the UK in no time? That's terrifying. I agree. We don't want that. Yes, I support Trump and Elon making the UK another US state. We are second-class citizens in our own country and last for health, housing and jobs. We're also not being protected when it comes to crime by illegal migrants. So there you go. So that's unsigned, but somebody say, yeah, I support the idea of Trump and Elon making the UK another US state. Right. You asked the question about who would sell Britain? Well, just look at two-tier, never here. He's selling us out at this very moment. And that's from Wayne in Tamworth. Yeah, I have to say, this is nothing new, is another message. Before the Second World War, the USA discussed taking over Canada. A president said why it would be just a walk, meaning Britain could not defend it. And that's from Chalky in Market to Drayton. Maybe that was the same plan. It did start with taking Canada and then to take the British Empire. So I think that's the same plan, the War Plan Red. But they did plan it. They planned it. So if they've done it once, it's possible to plan it again. I wouldn't, honestly, these days, can't take anything off the table, can you? Mark says, great show. Thank you, Mark. That's lovely to hear. And then what kind of stupid politician slap VAT on school fees as a slap them down policy and then starts paying the private medical sector to reduce the NHS waiting lists? It's just so ridiculous. VAT on university tuition fees will be next. Sarah near Plymouth. So you see, if they're daft enough to do that, maybe they are daft enough to sell the country. I don't know. Steve is in Cumbria. Hello, Steve.
Good morning, Petrie.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
And
this idea of the USA invading Britain isn't as far-fetched as you might think. It was tried during the War of Independence in 1778.
Was it?
A chap called John Paul Jones, who was a US naval commander, landed at Whitehaven in Cumbria. Whitehaven at the time, he only had a small force, but Whitehaven at the time was heavily involved in the slave trade. And his idea was that he was going to set the slaves free and they would join him, and then the invasion would roll on from there.
No.
Seriously, yeah. The problem was his men got to the pub and they couldn't handle the beer, so they all ended up absolutely smashed.
I love that a bit. What, that failed attempt because they were all drunk?
Yeah. He invaded, he sort of shouted charge, ran up the hill, entered the fort, come on lads. They turned around and there was nobody behind him.
I'm going to have to look this up now.
It's been tried once already.
And they had a plan in the 1930s.
In the US. He has his own crypt at the naval headquarters and all that carry on.
That's brilliant. So you see, it's not that far-fetched, right? And Bush was saying we're the poodle. It's not impossible. And we know that MAGA and Trump have got some pretty strange ideas, haven't they?
Well, I may be mistaken, but I don't think I am. I think Greenland is a dependency of Denmark. So he would have to negotiate with Denmark. And let's be honest, it's no different to us negotiating with Argentina over the Falklands, is it? You know, do you want to buy these islands? Yeah, okay then.
So we could sell the Falkland Islands. Mind you, they would say they're not yours to sell.
I'm saying it's no different, is it?
Mm.
And moving on to the this Muslim Asian rape and torture gangs, I'd ask the question: where do these so-called community leaders seem to pop out of the wood as soon as there's any sort of riot or violence? You know, why aren't they calling out their own people and, you know, the moderate Muslims and marching them down to the jails and to the police station? And why aren't these Muslim MPs and Muslim councillors, why aren't they up in arms about it? You know,
which you would think they would be and should be, because it's sullying the whole religion, it's sullying the whole community. So you would hope that they would say, well, look, hang on a minute, you know, but we don't know that they haven't, right? I mean, we don't know that they haven't done that.
Well, I've not seen one on television or heard one on radio.
Mm. Yeah,
you know, unlike the Southport riots, you know, they're all out appealing for peace and calm and, you know, brotherhood and all the rest of it. You know, the police keep saying, look, we're talking to community leaders. Well, where are the community leaders now?
Yeah, I mean, and they should want an independent nationwide review as well. But I think another inquiry, I don't know, I think I'm with Amy Fisher on that. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think we've had inquiries. We've had so many inquiries up north, individuals, you know, police inquiring about themselves. We've had, you know, in Manchester, in Oldham and Rotherham and in separate inquiries. It's time now just to implement the J report and get on with it.
Honestly, Petrie, I'm sick and fed up of hearing it.
Yeah.
And an investigation will take place.
I know, we're all bored of it. Just implement it, right? Just do it. It's as simple as that. We're sick and tired of all this blah, 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 and nothing happening.
Grow a backbone.
Yeah, grow a pair is what I'd say. I think Starmer is a political coward. I just do, and I will stick by that until he comes and punches me in the face.
Such a lettuce, isn't he? Honestly, he really is.
What? I mean, what a state are we in? What a state are we in when our country is run by these people? Yeah. And I mean all of them, not just Labour. I mean the whole lot.
Exactly, yeah.
Idiots.
Yeah.
Idiots.
You know, in a way, I suppose he's right to blame, you know, the last 14 years of Tory government, blah, blah, blah. But again, sick of hearing it. Get on with it now. Do something.
You've taken our money.
Yeah.
Now you're trying our patience. Just you've got our money now. Just get on with it and stop talking about it. We're sick of it. We're all sick of it. We just want to actually see some action.
Exactly.
So, and that's where I am. Listen, it's great to talk to you, Steve. I'm fascinated by that attempt on Cumbria and the fact that the the warring Americans couldn't handle the beer. Well, there you go. Got to take a break. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Right, so it's Petrie here, by the way. I've had my people check to see if we can, root around the back of the sofa and buy the UK. Bad news. Apparently you can't really buy a country. The idea of just amassing a lot of money and then making an offer to a country in need of some funds, which we will do by the time Labour are finished, is basically a pipe dream. Exchange-traded funds, though, invented in 1993, offer extremely easy ways to buy into hundreds of thousands of companies at the same time, so you can easily make industry or country investments, increasing your influence in that country. Musk is going to buy... I've got my money on a certain TV station that he's going to buy. Anyway, however, you can start your own country. Who's in it with me on this? By buying an island and starting your own micronation. A micronation near the UK, Sealand, that is actually looking for a buyer. Look, if we had a GoFundMe and we all got enough money together, we could buy it and all of us move there. I'll be Prime Minister. No, I wouldn't. That's wrong. I'd be awful. But we'd be able to have a proper... Let's do it. Anybody who wants to join me in buying a micronation, how much do they want for it? 1 trillion? Billion? Oh, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, look, come on, we've all got... I know we haven't got any spare money, really, but if enough of us in the UK get together and buy... Can you imagine that? Keir Starmer would turn around and there's nobody here to tax. We can start our own micronation, go over there, start a proper country the way we want it run, and leave Keir Starmer with his whatever he wants to support and look after, and we'll just run our own country. Who's in it? Who's there? I'm there. I'm definitely there. It's called Sealand. Let's find out how much they want. We're talking about Elon Musk and the liberation of Britain from our tyrannical government. I don't see them being tyrannical. I see them as being particularly weak, deaf, and a bit dumb and a bit stupid. But I don't know whether he's a tyrant. A private island set in Scotland's Loch Lomond. Oh no, I've got bad memories of Loch Lomond from when I was a kid. We used to go there on so-called summer holidays, and my parents made me swim in the loch. It was freezing. A private island set in Scotland's Loch Lomond came on the market, 995,000. It's probably not big enough. I think there'll be quite a lot of people in the UK who want to come with us. Sealand was on offer for 750 million in 2010, so it's probably $1 billion now. But if there's enough of us in this country, we can throw in a couple of quid. It didn't sell. Oh, we're in. OK, find out how big it is. I want to know how big it is. How many people can we get on it? From Joanna in Salisbury, we've only just escaped the clutches of the EU. Why would we want to join the US and lose our independence and sovereignty again? Good question. So, yeah, come with me. Let's start our own... I'd have to change... Sealand is a dreadful name. We'd have to change that. I don't know what I'd call it yet, but that would be the wrong name for a country. It sounds like you're going to just go and see otters and sea lions, doesn't it? And maybe a blue whale. Violetta is in St Albans. Hello.
Hello, Petrie.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Just really annoyed. Annoyed by the team, because there is no way that this country is ever going to be American territory of some kind. This country is called Great Britain, where British people live, and we will fight for our country. We do have the enemy within. Yes, we do. We do have many problems, and we need to get our act together. Act together. Sorry, I'm a foreigner. Oh, British citizen. Only 30 years of that, yeah. With 2 British sons and their British father, and all highly educated, doctors of sciences and stuff like that. So I do care about this country. I care about the people. Yeah, and to your producer, I was saying how Americans have treated when they came into the country which wasn't theirs, our continent, how they have treated Northern American Indians. Are we going to be the next in Great Britain? I don't think so.
I think it's really interesting. It's a really interesting point, but it's an interesting question because we've been seen as this sort of bolt-on to America for quite a few years now, and they expect us, like the poodle. We could do anything. We would do anything they ask us to, basically.
No, we will not. We will not. We need to change the politicians and the lawmakers to actually talk on behalf of the people of this country. These people are the best people in the world. This is the best country in the world. I have traveled. I have lived elsewhere. Excuse me. This is Great Britain, and it serves its name right. We just need to sort out what is happening over there when the money works, and money will go around, and corruption, and idiotism. Can I just say, I do have Muslim surname, and I have worked. I was married to a guy whose father was a Muslim British, Syrian British, to be exact, mother German British. I am born in Serbia. I grew up in Croatia. I have lived in Switzerland, fell in love on the ski slopes, and came to Britain 30 years ago. My sons are British. So I'm just saying, we are all from somewhere, but we need to pull ourselves together and fight for this country. Intelligence rules, not fighting on the street. Intelligence rules. We need to start thinking.
But what about the idea of Americans have at the moment that we're living under a tyrannical government? I don't think he knows what tyranny really means, to be honest.
No, they haven't got a clue what tyranny means. They haven't lived in a socialist country under the communist regime. Okay?
Yeah.
That is tyranny. They haven't
China is tyranny. Yeah.
Yes. Russia is tyranny. Former Yugoslavia was also semi-tyranny. Yep.
Yeah.
Iran is tyranny. All of those huge
Afghanistan. Yeah.
Afghanistan is tyranny. All of those are huge ideologies, and you will know because you were the reporter from Bosnia. I do know that. And I already thank you for that, for exposing the truth, while sacrificing, basically putting your own life in question over there. We need people like you. We need people to stand up for this country. British people, thank you very much. Whoever comes to this country, like me, the foreigner, I need to accept your culture, your rules, your morals, your values, your language, not another way around.
Yeah. I think there'll be people absolutely applauding you for that, Violetta, and it's always lovely to talk to you.
They don't need to applaud me. They need to wake up, stop competing with the Joneses, and don't let us Americans tell us that porridge is a junk food, but Kentucky Fried Chicken is absolutely good for you. And then tell us the jobs. Yeah.
That was true. That was in the papers, wasn't it? That the chicken wasn't a junk food, but porridge is.
It's a junk food and crumpets, apparently. Come on, Britain, let's wake up. Let's wake up.
Oh, I adore you, Violet. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Violet, it's gorgeous to talk to you as ever. I've got some disappointing news for you about Sealand. I mean, I don't like the name. That's good. It's only 4,000 square metres. That's a lot. £1 billion for 4,000 square metres. It's approximately the size of an Olympic running track. Well, we could move there, the four of us, but I don't know. You could bring your wife and kids. I don't mind that. And as of August 2024, it had a population of 1. They'd have to move out. There's not enough room for them, is there? Unbelievable. So I think buying Sealand is off. It's just not big enough. We're going to have to find...